He smirks and is already preparing to say his final word in response to Vladimir. A refusal rang through the air. Vladimir was shocked. How could Soo-hyuk turn down such a great offer? The refusal sounds firm. The other person is already ready to make him a hero. Soo-hyuk shrugs, making it clear the choice has been made. The interlocutor speaks dismissively of Oceanmu's influence, which is limited to Korea. Vladimir frowns, comparing the scale of their ambitions. The proud declaration of world-class status sounds like a challenge. Vladimir tries to persuade Messrs. The display of power through the mention of the Aztec group is accompanied by a generous offer. A curt refusal interrupts the negotiations. The hero stands up, demonstratively placing his hand between them, and he turns around to leave quickly. There's nothing more for him to do here. The other man tries to stop him from leaving, but Soo-hyuk compares the offer to poisoned honey. His steps don't slow. The main character clearly refuses to participate in other people's games. He says he will live only the way he wants to. A chuckle through clenched teeth betrays ambivalence about the boy's stubbornness and intelligence. The other man's head bobs in bewilderment. Vladimir notices the guy's great ambitions, which makes him like him even more. The scene changes and we find ourselves in the city again. Reflections on the meeting with Vladimir are replaced by a slight sense of relief. Open conflict was avoided. Mistrust of Vladimir grows, fueled by memories of his manipulations. The white guy is a snake by nature. The temptation of convenience pales before the realization of dependence. Vladimir's conditions are like cheese in a mousetrap. Confidence resonates in every movement. Soo-hyuk looks up and into the distance. He finally sees his home in front of him and continues moving towards it. The door creaks, letting the hero into the silence of the house. Mom waves from the doorway, her smile a contrast to the question of sudden departure early in the morning. And she offers him something to eat first, and informs him that his dad and sister have gone to work. The suggestion of a walk after the meal sounds like a breath of normal life. The hero nods. The clatter of dishes mingles with his mother's voice. Soo-hyuk lingers in the doorway, drawing his mother's attention. Before the conversation, the guy is silent, collecting his thoughts. What he wants to say is very important. We see the clock and time slipping away as the protagonist's story unfolds. The story that began that day turned out to be full of unexpected twists. The boy decides to reveal the truth about his awakening to his family, starting in the hospital room. The story of superpowers, registering with the association, and the first missions is interrupted by a pause. The hero lowers his eyes, avoiding the topic of the Hyjin continent. The weight of silence weighs more heavily than monsters. Soo-hyuk hides his true fears to avoid seeing the worry in his parents' eyes. The mother turns to the hero and says that she understands that he has been through a lot in his life. His mother takes his hands, as if trying to share the burden of his worries. Her gaze speaks louder than words. She guesses a lot. The guy laughs it off, denying his inner struggle. A playful smile masks the shadow of fatigue flickering at the corners of his lips. Mentioning his sister's support sounds like gratitude. Without her support, he would have definitely gone crazy. The mother approvingly praises her son for sharing and for the thoughtfulness of his plans, but there's a hint of sadness in their voices. Even heroes need support, which they rarely acknowledge. The main character says there's no need to worry. The achievements of rank 12 pale in comparison to the new challenges. He's one of the most powerful hunters, but his mother says that the stronger he is, the stronger the enemies in front of him are. This shocks the main character. Soo-hyuk's mother sadly notes that the world's dangers aren't limited to the city. Her words sound like a warning, but there's no reproach in them, only concern. The woman cautiously mentions demons that surpass humans in strength. Her fingers grip the edge of the tablecloth, betraying concern for her son. The question of whether sacrifices for family or money are reasonable hangs in silence. Soo-hyuk looks away, as if avoiding a direct answer. The guy firmly denies feeling pressured by circumstances, but in his mind, he realizes he lied to her a little. He remembers that he was once different and did not communicate well with his family, or did not help at all. But after a series of losses and the realization of the most important thing in this life, he understands that he was wrong. Tears stream down Soo-hyuk's face, and he calls family his most important value. He asks his mother not to say that. He reminds us that happiness lies not in wealth, but in the support of loved ones. The mother's smile mingles with tears, which she quickly wipes away. The word beloved son sounds like a hymn to their relationship. They hug tightly. Soo-hyuk asks his mother to take care of herself, wiping away her tears. His gesture is gentle, but his gaze is fixed on the window, where new trials await. A mother watches her grown son with pride, noting how he has become a real man. Her eyes glow with a mixture of sadness and joy. The woman gently reminds him that the family is ready to share any difficulties. Her hand rests on Soo-hyuk's forearm. The boy nods, echoing his mother's words of mutual support. His voice is firm, but a warm smile flickers at the corner of his lips. Soo-hyuk promises to seek help, and his mother pats his hand approvingly. The room smells of freshly brewed tea. Her son's happiness is her top priority. The woman straightens his collar, hiding the trembling in her fingers from the overwhelming emotion. A short thank you sounds sincere. The hero bows his head, avoiding direct eye contact to avoid showing tears in his eyes. The last thing we see is a framed family photograph, symbolizing their complete reunion at last. The scene moves to a road along which a luxury limousine is racing at high speed. He drives through an expensive area among luxury cars and houses. Vladimir takes Baek Jae-moon's advice and announces his imminent return home tomorrow. The old man turns back and reminds about the planned meeting with the Nameless One. A brief confirmation of the meeting sounds like a death sentence. The guy turns away, avoiding further questions. The old man understands that the meeting apparently did not go so smoothly and lags behind the boy. Finally, the limousine arrived at Vladimir's mansion, and everyone except the driver got out of the car. Before parting, Vladimir admires Soo-hyuk in front of the old man. Fantastic is the only word he can find to describe him. He calls his new acquaintance cool, and this makes him fall in love with their small country. The vampire admits defeat when he fought with Soo-hyuk today. The interlocutor freezes in shock, not expecting such a turn of events. The old man apologizes, but the boy immediately clarifies that it was a joke. A smile plays across his lips, mixing irony with a hint of embarrassment. Even if his body was a clone now, he couldn't think that anyone other than the old man could defeat him. Vladimir asks the old man to get Soo-hyuk into their organization by any means possible. The old man says that their clan leader will be against it. The master's order to wait until the training is over sounds like a test. Vladimir says to never provoke the Soo-hyuk into hostility, and if someone decides to do it anyway, Vladimir will perceive it as personal enmity. The message will be delivered personally, the old man promises. Vladimir turns toward the exit, demonstrating determination. A final order before departure interrupts his thoughts. Gather all the media outlets before his flight tomorrow. The agreement is automatic. The old man bids Vladimir goodnight. The vampire goes home and does some pull-ups. Spending the whole day in the sun has a very detrimental effect on the clone's health and strength. The old man stands there at this time and thinks about what he should do with this nameless man. What seemed like a gentle breeze turned into a hurricane. Beads of sweat trickled down the man's face as he realized the complexity of the mission. An attempt to enjoy peace in old age is thwarted by new obligations. The old man's gaze sweeps across the mansion. The scene changes to Korea International Airport, which is where Vladimir will be flying from. He walks towards the gangway, and people around him take pictures, blinding him with multiple flashes. The vampire has 2 bodyguards with him and waves to all the journalists saying goodbye to him. Finally, he approaches his stand and prepares to begin his speech, welcoming everyone who has gathered there. Already on the phone, we see his recognition of the nameless man's exceptionalism ringing out like a challenge. The man crosses his arms, assessing his opponent's hidden potential. Before us appears a Soo-hyuk with this very phone. Rumors about it are spreading across the internet at incredible speed. Vladimir, Russia's most powerful man, gave an interview that rocked the media. His words revolutionized public opinion. The global audience is thrilled with these new developments. Bezimianny's fans are already approaching 1.5 million subscribers. The debate is raging online, with some predicting the end of Bezimianny's fame, while others fiercely defend his reputation. The situation is getting out of control, but the hero understands. This is just the beginning of a long journey. His gaze is full of determination. A ringing voice interrupts his thoughts. Soo-hyuk answers, maintaining his usual restraint. When asked how things are going, the guy answers briefly, "Everything's fine." He then mentions that he's been busy looking for a place to live lately. The vice chairman expresses concern, but the hero assures them that their worries are unfounded. His tone remains impenetrable. The question of emigration hangs in the air. Soo-hyuk sighs, saying that they have already discussed this topic. The conversation returns to the topic of trust, where the interlocutor carefully hints at possible changes in Soo-hyuk's decisions. The anxiety is heightened by Vladimir's activity. The interviewee justifies his anxiety by citing the morning's events, which were beyond expectations. Despite the lack of concrete proposals, the humorous remark diffuses the tension. Laughter masks the awkwardness, indicating that there are no serious grounds for conflict yet. Soo-hyuk emphasizes the importance of maintaining the current agreements. His words sound like a promise, but they also hint at the conditionality of the agreement. A joke about Bezamani's manager status ends the conversation. The vice president still doesn't believe it. The invitation to visit the association is presented as an informal request. The intrigue is heightened by the mention of undisclosed details. The idea seems promising to the other person, but he insists on meeting in person. The pause before his answer reveals underlying misgivings. The question of urgency remains unclear. Soo-hyuk agrees to consider the proposal later, demonstrating his control over the situation. The request for exclusive rights to the portal comes as a surprise. The response is delayed, creating a moment of uncertainty. The statement about the imminent use of rights brings the interlocutor back into the dialogue, but the vice president is still shocked by the statement. Exclusive rights to portals are usually only available to awakened beings of rank 12+. Few find true use for them. The reason for the restrictions is simple: a monopoly on resources. On the table in front of him are the distribution charts for the magic stones. Control over the portal means power over all the world's resources. The warning about conflicts between guilds reminds the main character of the danger. The vice president asks the protagonist if he's ready. It's a big risk and a big danger. Danger doesn't frighten anyone. The nameless one's name has become a shield. A nod in response to doubt confirms a willingness to take risks. Consent is given without hesitation. The contract is signed, the seal is imprinted on the paper, as if settling the dispute. Preparations for the confirmation of rights are in full swing. Soo-hyuk thanks his manager and says that their next conversation will be postponed until after the portal is cleared. The scene changes to a treetop. After a call from Oh Shinu, his training intensified. He spent a lot of time training and gathering information about portals. Routine inspection of rank 1 to 3 portals is straightforward. Soo-hyuk reviews the reports, noting the absence of anomalies. Soo-hyuk rejects small goals, focusing on the big prize. His demands grow in proportion to his ambitions. Level 80 seems insignificant compared to the standards for rank 12. He compares his progress with guild expectations. Martial arts have helped me get to this point, but now, a quantum leap is needed. My gaze is set on new horizons. Leveling up requires risky moves. Capturing high-ranking portals becomes a priority. The rarity of powerful portals is irritating. Soo-hyuk combs through the reports, searching for even a hint of a suitable target. A 6th-tier portal isn't ideal, but there are no alternatives. Disappointment mingles with the determination to seize the opportunity. Doubts flicker before him as he decides whether to enter the 6th-rank portal or wait for more. Suddenly, a system screen appears before his eyes. He can't believe his eyes. A notification about a rank 10 portal in the city of Pyeongan pops up on the screen. The protagonist can't believe his luck. The interlocutor is surprised by Soo-hyuk's absence again. The question about the reasons sounds more like a rhetorical reproach. The timing of his trip to the provinces remains uncertain. The young man dismisses his worries, trying to minimize the concerns of his loved ones. The request to keep an eye on the parents is accompanied by a curt nod. The voice carries a familiar sense of responsibility, devoid of emotion. Consent is given reluctantly, through clenched teeth. The sister covers her face with her hand, as if resigning herself to the inevitable. Finally, Gigi gets into the car and steps on the gas. Now he ends the conversation by saying that it's time for him to go on business. His Geländewagen continues on its way. Soo-hyuk is very focused on his route. He's smiling, because his goal is Pohang. The scene changes, and for some reason we see a huge hand sticking out of the ocean. The portal's size astonishes even an experienced hunter, and the crowd of ordinary people is completely shocked by such a spectacle. Someone from the crowd shouts out that such a large portal definitely requires a person of at least rank 12. The noise increases near the edge of the restricted area. Guards block the way, demanding immediate evacuation. A soldier shouts, demanding a retreat. Panic grips the group, and they beg for anything to be done to ensure their safety. The document check process drags on. A security officer stops Soo-hyuk's car and demands his documents. A border guard looks into a car window, and before him appears Soo-hyuk in his superhero mask, showing his ring, which symbolizes his rank. The soldier recognizes the nameless one and salutes him. He says he'll quickly open the way to the portal for him. He opens the barrier, and we see our main character's white Geländewagen heading straight towards the portal. The portal's hostile classification is confirmed. The data on the screen flashes red, warning of an increased threat. The biggest dilemma in his life is that even 12th rank does not guarantee victory over an equally powerful portal. Standard tactics recommend choosing portals 3 ranks lower. Exceptions are rare and require special preparation. Monsters of rank 10 plus exhibit a non-linear growth rate. The graphs show a sharp increase in their power after a certain threshold. 3 years ago, a group of 3 rank 12 awakened ones risked entering a level 11 portal. Their story became a lesson for all guilds. Of the 3 participants, only 2 were able to return after the portal's closure. This case is still being discussed in professional circles. A call from the vice president appears on Soo-hyuk's phone screen. His warnings about the risks sound like he's only concerned about national treasure. The vice chairman insists on revising the plan, but to no avail. Soo-hyuk's question about the connection between high ambitions and future success leaves the vice president perplexed. Gigi mentions that he could even become a World 9, but even now he is not satisfied with this title. Soo-hyuk rejects the path of moderation. His goal is to become an exception, transcending the ordinary capabilities of awakened beings. The vice chairman capitulates to the hero's resolve. A nod and a brief "I believe in you" become formal consent. The order to immediately prepare for portal entry is given without hesitation. Activation mechanisms are launched in real time. The portal officially comes under Soo-hyuk's control. The hum of energy grows, heralding the beginning of a dangerous mission. Suddenly, the ground around the portal begins to crack and shake violently. This greatly surprises the protagonist. He has never seen anything like this with any portal before. Suddenly, the portal contracts and some kind of black entity appears from it. The first thing that shows is his huge paw, which creates even more cracks in the ground. We see a huge red reptilian gas. It is directed at all the people in the area, and especially at our main character. People look at this action in shock, because they recognize this huge creature. The black salamander emerges from the portal's shadow. The squad members freeze, recognizing the legendary creature from survival textbooks. The creature is attempting to break through the portal. The squad captain signals the snipers to take up positions for immediate intervention. A barrage of fire descends upon the target, illuminating the area with bright flashes. All forces are thrown into attacking the reptile. Even tanks were deployed to repel the reptile's attack from the portal. They fired powerful salvos at the dino. There was probably nothing left of the reptile's power and number of attacks. Only smoke surrounded the area around the portal and the creature, but suddenly 2 glowing eyes appear from the smoke. And the very next second, she opens her mouth wide, and a howl is heard, because of which soldiers cannot even turn around and run away from the battlefield. The paralysis attack attributed to draconic creatures robs the victim of the will to resist. It is often called fear due to its overwhelming effect. The ability affects lower life forms, blocking rational thought. Victims become easy prey, incapable of escape or attack. A powerful blow stuns the target, eliciting a muffled groan. An attempt to counterattack is interrupted by a sudden weakness in the legs, and at that very moment, a huge salamander's mouth falls upon all the soldiers, ready to eat them with one bite. But suddenly the reptile is stopped by a cry from behind. She immediately pays attention to it, and now she sees Soo-hyuk in his mask and with energy in his leg, who is already falling from above right on top of her, preparing a powerful blow. And with one blow, he knocks the huge monster to the ground. His strength has increased significantly. The Nameless One appears suddenly, his presence halting the enemy's advance. The soldiers are shocked by his power, but the monster calls into the air, growling and preparing a new blow, this time aimed at the main character. The main character understands that the monster's tough hide can withstand even the most powerful blows. Every blow bounces off as if it were steel armor. He looks ahead and sees a huge black salamander already running towards him with its mouth open, ready to eat him at any second. He squeezes his kulon and says that it is time to show his new technique, which he has been practicing for a long time before. Soo-hyuk demonstrates a new technique, Divine Fist of 100 Steps. His movements merge into a single stream, ending with a crushing blow to the epicenter of energy. The reptile stands in shock and can only watch as the flow of energy flies straight at it, and he is too strong. He knocks her down with one blow, almost reducing her to dust. Between them, there remains only smoke from a very strong energy. The salamander is defeated, and in place of the huge monster, we see only a huge hole through which the main character is visible. The skill level soars. A sigh of relief escapes the chest. The 5th level of the martial art has been reached. The Divine Fist reaches the 3rd star, confirming its status as a legendary technique. The Nameless One is recognized as an utterly destructive force. The crowd rejoices. His name is now associated with irreversible consequences in any battle. Energy gradually dissipates around him. Suddenly, he notices something important around him. There's some kind of red splinter sticking out of the salamander's body. It's really cool, but it's not clear what it is. He quickly takes it out, and now this red thing is in his power. The magic stone explodes with a bright flash. The hero sees that it is rank 10. The first step toward his goal turns out to be unexpectedly successful. He can make even more money by selling it. The hero realizes that a creature, capable of becoming a boss under other circumstances, appears without warning. This means that there are even more powerful creatures inside the portal. A rumble from the depths of the portal warns of new threats. The rank 10 portal lives up to its reputation. From this moment on, the real battle begins. The rules of the game change, requiring maximum concentration and readiness for the unpredictable. Breaking news: the Nameless One storms the Dragon's Nest. A 12th rank Awakened One challenges a zone where even elites doubt success. The debate over the portal's exclusive rights is reaching a fever pitch. There are calls to send a rescue team, but doubts about the adequacy of this decision are growing. The order for immediate rescue is met with a heavy sigh. The situation has clearly gotten out of control, requiring unconventional solutions. Chaos reigns within the portal. The sounds of boiling magic merge into a menacing roar, foreshadowing catastrophe. The vice president reflects on all this over a cup of delicious coffee. The chaos in the Dragon's Nest is understandable. Even experienced guilds avoid such challenges. The threat level is off the charts. The rank 10 portal lives up to its reputation as a deadly trap. Soloing such dungeons is a rarity among Awakened. Only 5 of the legendary 8 were able to replicate such a feat. The Nameless One risks joining this exclusive circle. Success at Dragon's Nest will place him among the elite. However, his meteoric rise raises more questions than admiration. Just 6 months since his debut is too short a time for such ambitions. The distance to Universal 8 remains an insurmountable chasm. He needs to grow. The scene changes, and we are transported inside a portal into some wild jungle. We see movement in the forest. The leaves are moving, which means there is movement nearby. A huge reptile runs through the forest, shaking everything around it. We see a huge volcano in the middle of this strange, wild world. And from below, you can already see a huge dinosaur running straight towards this volcano. Suddenly, one of the dinosaurs was hit in the face, and blood splattered onto the screen. All the other dinos noticed this and backed away warily, sensing danger nearby. Suddenly, the attacking energy of the main character appears in front of them and is ready to hit them. But the blow strangely misses them, leaving all the dinosaurs confused. One of them turns around and, in bewilderment, tries to understand what it was. Suddenly, the main character's blow returns, and with monstrous force, flies into the side of this dinosaur's head. This throws him very far, literally destroying everything around him with the dinosaur's body. Soo-hyuk looks with satisfaction at how his fist, charged with energy, was able to create such a powerful blow. After a while, he steps on the carcass of the defeated dinosaur. He realizes that his attempt to capture his target with magic is failing. The difficulty of the task forces him to reconsider his tactics, but he's not used to giving up. A month in the Dragon's Nest has left its mark on everything, from his gear to his movement. Time is working in his favor. Gigantic dragon carcasses are now butchered with cold precision. Every claw and scale is a valuable resource, and there are more of them here than expected. Ideal hunting conditions present a new challenge. Even skill can't protect against unexpected obstacles en route to the target. The voluminous inventory suddenly overflowed, a rare case where the loot exceeded even the wildest estimates. Greed is a hunter's eternal companion. The more you get, the more acutely you feel the lack. A lesson Soo-hyuk learns the hard way. Hundreds of dragon-like creatures were destroyed in a month. Mountains of trophies became proof of skill, but also a source of new dilemmas. An idea comes to his mind that he needs to quickly buy unlimited storage. This is the next step to absolute freedom of action. The bag's ad entices with the promise of limitless space. The typo in the name doesn't hide the essence. It's a holy grail for hunters. The artifact, crafted by elven masters, is unique. Its price is justified. Boundless magic costs a fortune, but it opens up incredible possibilities. It really is simply limitless. But the price of 30 billion won will shock even experienced guilds. For that kind of money, you could buy a skyscraper in Seoul, but the hero is confident that the game is worth the candle. The determination to buy an artifact sounds like a vow. The plan is simple. Earn it, overcome all obstacles, and obtain the coveted item at any cost. A Tyrannosaurus Rex carcass is prized above ordinary trophies. Every piece of meat, every bone is carefully packaged. Nothing is thrown away. Unnecessary items are thrown aside. The process is reminiscent of sorting diamonds in dirt. Only valuable items deserve a place in your inventory. The scene shifts to evening, and we see a large fire. And the dinosaur carcass next to him, and the car? That's how the guy survives all these days. A sizzling sound emanates from a roasting pan filled with poisonous meat. Each serving is a step toward immunity, but the risk of poisoning still hangs in the air. Poison resistance skill has reached micro rank. A month of experimenting with toxic food is beginning to bear the first tangible fruit. Gradually adapting to poisons transforms the body into a fortress. Now, even lethal doses are no longer a threat. Immunity grows with every meal. Immunity to 100 poisons has become an intermediate step. The plan to reach the 1,000 mark seems ambitious, but no longer impossible. The dream of invulnerability to 10,000 toxins is shattered by reality. There simply aren't enough threats in the world to test the limits of our abilities. A mysterious exclamation interrupts my thoughts. Perhaps the answer to all my questions lies in the next danger zone. The gaze turns to the area of the volcano with enhanced poison. Even after all the achievements, there's still plenty to challenge here. The determination to explore new territory resonates in every word. The pause before action only emphasizes the seriousness of their intentions. Soo-hyuk's stats are impressive. Level 86, Strength 112, Wisdom 131. His progress in the portal over the month exceeded all expectations. Harmony of body and spirit was achieved without special training. Effective use of internal energy yielded stunning results. 2 years of inner strength in a month, the result of using the divine technique. We'll make up for the shortfall with elixirs, but there's no rush. Money decides everything. Artifacts, potions, resources. An environment where every advantage is available continues to entice, but doesn't lead astray. Refusing external support is a conscious choice. Self-empowerment and alternative growth methods make regret pointless. He remembers that all that helps him win is magic, and he remembers the monk with a shiny bald head from the previous world. He returns headlong to the journey between dimensions that began on the Huang continent. There, in the distant past, the foundations of the hero's future achievements were laid. The Age of Chaos divided the continent into warring states. Endless wars turned the lands into arenas of bloody conflict. Borders shifted daily, and rivers of blood became a symbol of that era. No corner remained safe from the fighting. By uniting the continent with the power of martial arts, Soo-hyuk made an unexpected discovery. It turns out that wars are won not by fists, but by strategy. Magic surpassed hand-to-hand combat on a battlefield scale. Its destructive power rewrote the rules of any battle. Hyuksanji's name was first heard at that turning point. It became a symbol of a new stage in the hero's evolution. On the battlefield, magic proved more terrible than any sword. This forced the guy to master it, despite his loyalty to martial traditions. The bitter truth reveals his limitations. A martial arts genius has proven helpless in magic. Doubts gnaw at him, but giving up isn't in the boy's nature. Hyuksanja is merciless in his assessments. Even after a century of training, Soo-hyuk won't master basic spells. The comparison to whale fishing with a stick only intensifies the bitterness. A loser's only chance is to trust in luck. That's exactly what the bald master thinks. The cruelty of reality requires no comment. The question of the role of luck in life hangs like a rhetorical reproach to circumstances. Rage explodes into a blow. The test of luck turns into a crude experiment. Either he'll succeed or he won't. The bald man asks him not to fight. The scene changes to a starry sky. Now all he can do is reminisce about those happy times. He misses them so much. Suddenly the scene shifts to the bushes, from which 2 dinosaurs are looking at the hero. Or a little more. Try counting pairs of evil eyes. The scene moves again, as close to the fire as possible. The hero lies on the rocks and enjoys a long-awaited rest. Suddenly he notices the sounds around him. A rustling sound in the darkness signals intruders. The invisible threat makes the boy freeze, analyzing the source of the sound. The raptors who escaped during the day showed up at night. The main character smirks at this. Their silhouettes flicker among the trees, confirming the worst assumptions. The scene changes, and now they have decided to attack him. A multitude of dinosaurs run and roar, intending to defeat the main character in a crowd, but he merely smirks and says he's ready to meet them. At that moment, he prepares his favorite move, the magic fist. The scene switches back to a landscape with a volcano, and from a bird's eye view, we see how the main character's magical blows shake the forest. After a series of precise strikes, only 3 targets remain. The hunt enters its final phase and every second counts. The hero smiles, already knowing his next step. The magical barrier explodes under a series of precise strikes, sending energy flying precisely at the opponents. They all hit the mark. Dinosaurs fall to the ground dead. A system notification announces each level increase. Progress is steady, pleasingly effective. The thought of mastering magic is haunting. Even basic spells could be a significant addition to one's arsenal. The foundation of martial arts is the energy of the lower dantian. Magic, however, is born in the middle, requiring a fundamentally different level of control. Learning magic is compared to fishing. A premature hook ruins the entire process. Patience is key. Impulsiveness leads to failure. A real catch is only possible when the float is completely submerged. The search for a method for basic spells continues. Even weak magic opens up new tactical possibilities. Low-level spells are useless against armies. Their value lies in targeted use and practicing control. Magic is effective against single targets. The system signal opens access to the Akashic Records, the repository of universal knowledge. The system confirms authorization. A greeting from the Dimensional Library loads on the interface screen. Soo-hyuk is shocked. Soo-hyuk studies the terms Akashic Records and Dimensional Library. He doesn't believe he was able to access them. He recalls the bald man who said that magic cannot be mastered by brute force. The emphasis is on intellect. Analysis and precise calculation replace physical effort. Hyuksanja was right. Magic requires erudition. The Akashic Records contain all the world's knowledge, confirming the theory. And now, the main character has access to them. An attempt to directly access the Akashic Records is blocked. A low authority level warning, level 1, is issued, stopping the request. Access to information is strictly limited. The system prompts you to ask a specific question to obtain fragmented data. At level 1, only viewing is possible. A secondary profession, mage, has been created, but the restrictions are annoying. He looks at his specialty and is simply shocked. The system already knows he's a mage. Then he notices that awakened ones have 2 abilities. The Esper's dual gifts, fire and flow, awaken. An unexpected discovery changes the rules of the game, opening up new possibilities. Park Mugi comes to mind, an example of such a gift. His case confirms the reality of dual abilities in the world of the awakened. The spell's effect exceeds expectations. Surprise is reflected on the face, although no specific numbers are given. Magic testing begins immediately. The decision to test the spell's power in practice feels like a challenge. The strength enhancement spell is activated by clapping. Its simplicity belies its powerful effect. Strong magic covers his body starting from his feet. System notification. D-rank enhancement magic has been acquired. The new ability is instantly available upon command activation. Statistics increase instantly upon activation. The ability to reuse the power changes the way we understand magic. And for the sake of such powerful effects, he decides to activate the power one more time. His hands clap, but the spell's recasting is blocked by an active effect. The boy switches to testing other abilities to circumvent the restriction. D-rank, speed boost registration is successful. System notifications confirm the addition of a new skill to the arsenal. The system blocks the learning of new spells. The requirement to advance a profession is displayed in red on the interface. The restriction is puzzling. The guy rereads the error message, checking the access conditions. The promotion term requires hidden conditions to be met. The instruction redirects to the status menu to check the parameters. A check of registered skills shows 6 positions. He decides to look at the 6th one. The list of buffing skills includes strength, speed, endurance, and magic. Defense and deterrence are highlighted as untested options. A defensive skill is useful for preserving loot. On the Huang continent, these skills remained unused. Deterrence can change the course of a real battle. Practical application of this skill unlocks tactical advantages. The interface tracks progress. 5 stars, creation of an A-rank linker, and learning of a D-rank defense/deterrence skill. Strengthening skills are registered. Yang Soo-hyuk's status is level 88, with a mage as a secondary profession. The promotion check window shows unmet criteria. The requirements for promotion to mage are 1 billion experience points and an angel/demon heart. The system asks for confirmation to initiate the upgrade, causing confusion. Advancing a profession can block level progression. The risk is obvious. The difficulty of obtaining components exceeds current capabilities. Hunting angels or demons seems suicidal. A clenched fist reflects tension. A mistake will lead to fatal consequences. The current force is clearly insufficient for such tasks. An early promotion looks like a strategic mistake without proper preparation. The angels are inviolable as the leaders of the interdimensional alliance. Any conflict with them threatens catastrophic retribution. The decision to postpone the increase has been made. The first step is clearing a rank 10 portal to accumulate resources and experience. He looks at the volcano and understands that his next opponent is right there. We see a huge scaly tail floating in the lava, and then the eye of this monster, in which lava and fire are reflected. Before us appears a monstrous fiery snake, the next enemy of the main character. Before her, we see the remains of those brave people who decided to kill her before. The scene changes to a volcano that is already erupting vigorously. Soo-hyuk instantly recognizes the target lurking near the volcano. His gaze registers the characteristic movement of the poisonous creature. This giant snake has not yet reached the level of a Mugi, but its size already inspires serious awe in the observer. The monster's length clearly exceeds 20 meters, making it a formidable opponent in the upcoming battle. Despite its terrifying size, the boy confidently believes the creature is just a large snake. The mage is confident that activating the stat boost will guarantee him victory in this battle without any unnecessary complications. But suddenly, the snake begins to beat its tail on the ground and wriggle in place. Soo-hyuk notices the snake's unusual sensitivity to the flow of chi emanating from him. The hunter understands that even a master of harmony could fall victim to such a monstrous creature. And now he decided to try how far he could go to defeat this scaly monster. He began to gather all his energy into a fist. It rushed towards him in streams. Soo-hyuk released a crushing blow of the divine fist of 100 steps towards the snake, and a huge flow of energy began to push back the snake. After all, he is quite a strong fighter, but suddenly the snake simply opened its mouth and absorbed all the energy. It did not receive any damage. The boy was amazed to see how the attack was easily absorbed by the creature without any visible damage, but the snake had already begun to surround him from all sides, and its double tongue was touching the protagonist's hands and feet. But he managed to jump powerfully and bounce back from the attack of the huge snake. The man realized his mistake. In front of him was clearly not an ordinary snake, but something much more dangerous. Soo-hyuk urgently requested data from the Akashic records to understand the enemy's true nature. The system identified the creature as Nephalano, the cursed ancient dragon of the fallen world, a hatchling. The boy was amazed to realize that he was fighting a real dragon, and only a small cub at that. The dragon suddenly spoke, asking Soo-hyuk the reason for wanting to destroy this world. The man was shocked by the dragon's ability to speak, but the snake still expected to hear an answer to the question asked. The guy briefly explained his destructive actions as simple necessity, without unnecessary details. The dragon asked Soo-hyuk a direct question about the possible benefits of destroying this world. The guy called the question obvious, and explained the need to protect his world from invasion through portals. The snake was slightly perplexed. The guy expressed doubt about the danger of most people to the dragon world. The dragon accused people of aggression and proclaimed the law of the strong as the natural order of things. Soo-hyuk agreed with the rights of the strong, but emphasized the inherent right of the weak to life and survival. The dragon repeated his main question about Soo-hyuk's intention to destroy this world. The guy confirmed his goal, acknowledging that there were compelling reasons on both sides of the conflict. Licking his lips, the dragon stated his own reasons for protecting the world and the need to stop Soo-hyuk. Soo-hyuk suggested ending the conversation and moving on to decisive action, which the dragon called presumptuous. The dragon dismissively called the guy a weak person and intended to quote a famous saying. The guy smiled and said that the true scale could only be assessed by direct measurement. The fight began and Soo-hyuk ran headlong on his super energy towards the mouth of the huge snake, but suddenly it disappeared right from under his nose. The jump was lightning fast. The boy asked if the dragon knew of a certain advantage of being larger in size in combat. He explained that a larger target gives the attacker more points to strike. The snake was shocked by such an attack from an ordinary person, and Soo-hyuk struck with all his energy straight at the dragon's head, pressing it to the ground and pressing it with more and more energy. After the blow, the snake looked at the huge bump left by the main character and was clearly upset by it. The monster, enraged by the man's insolence, let out a howl of rage and launched projectiles of its poisonous slime and acid around him. The guy covered himself with a shield and contemptuously called the snake's actions a cowardly spit, unworthy of a serious opponent. But suddenly he looked ahead and was amazed at what the dragon was preparing. The creature noted Suyuk's agility, comparing his dodges to those of a pesky fly. A deadly charge was being prepared within its mouth. The enraged dragon declared his immediate intention to completely destroy his impudent opponent. The boy barely dodged the beam, only the energy helped him move faster. He didn't understand how the dragon had done it. Surprised, Suhyuk recognized the enemy's true nature, realizing the power of a real dragon. The dragon demonstrated its destructive breath, highlighting the difficulty of countering its power. The guy noted the incredible vitality of the dragon, which withstood the blow of the divine fist of 100 steps. The man realized the limitations of ordinary chi against such protection, which required a different approach. And now, he activated 100% of the energy and made a sharp leap forward. Suhyuk announced that he would take serious measures, intending to show the true power of his skills. The boy activated the first form of the Emperor's martial arts technique for a decisive attack. The penetrating palm technique was applied with maximum concentration of internal energy. Suhyuk gathered chi from all three dantians, exceeding the normal level of energy compression by 1 gapja. The boy issued a challenge, declaring the possibility of digging his claws deep if he successfully broke through the defense. The creature immediately roared and counterattacked, raising its head and opening its mouth in a cry of pain. The boy realized that it was time to use his own claw technique to defeat the dragon. Using the second form of the Emperor's Dragon Slayer claw technique, Suhyuk intensified his attack. The creature's roar turned into a sharp command to stop, pain spreading throughout the snake's body. Blood began to flow from all the cracks in the body and from the mouth. The snake begged to stop. He cast a last, pitiful glance at his killer, and he fell with all his might to the ground, shaking everything around him with his enormous body. The boy made muffled sounds of pain, demonstrating the physical strain of the fight. The dragon's lack of movement from its original position made the hunter wonder about the reason for these actions. Why didn't it move? Suhyuk suggested that there was valuable cosmic energy inside the creature's ball. The man was determined to finish the fight, gathered his strength, and sent out a powerful beam of swirling energy. But suddenly, something behind him caught his attention, and he turned towards the sound. He saw a huge mouth, full of energy, rushing towards him with all its force, trying to strike as quickly as possible, and he succeeded. The guy flew into the wall, crushing stones and perhaps even his spine. Already with half his body in the wall, he began to wonder, what was that? He began to get angry, thinking about how this bastard could strike so meanly. Such a sneak attack in the back. But what he saw surprised him greatly. A girl with red eyes emerged from the dust in front of him. It was she who hit him. The main character tried to get to his feet after such a powerful blow from the little girl. Her white hair was fluttering about. It didn't look like human hair, and even paler skin contrasted with large red snake eyes. When the dust cleared, he saw her in full growth. She was wearing some strange clothes and had a strange appearance. Suhyuk was surprised to realize that the girl in front of him was the evil demon dragon Nephalano. The dragon girl desperately and shakingly begged for the attacks to stop, clearly experiencing severe pain or discomfort. The creature explained its defense of the world by the need to save someone's life from imminent death. She gritted her teeth and leaned forward, explaining that if he didn't do this, the hero would die himself. She needed to protect this world. She jumped on the spot, pushing off the ground forward with force, and she raised her hand to deliver a powerful blow to the main character. The guy was completely shocked by such an attack from the little snake girl towards him. And at the last second, Suhyuk managed to jump back from the powerful blow, leaving cracks in the ground and a shock wave. The guy noticed a strange process, reminiscent of the shedding of skin or the transformation of a dragon. The complete unexpectedness of what happened caused the man to exclaim, causing the Akashic system to begin investigating the situation. The Akashic records have revealed information about the cursed ancient dragon Nephalano from the fallen world. The girl expressed aloud her desire to kill the guy and flashed her red eyes in his direction. At this point, the boy began to doubt her status as a cub after the changes. The boy witnessed the dragon's transformation from a hatchling into a menacing form in a matter of moments. She attacked. The girl said that if she didn't kill him, she would die herself, and began to attack the main character with even greater force. The boy's misunderstanding of the dragon's motives arose from his statements about protecting the world at any cost. The girl growled that she was told to protect this world, or she would die, and attacked again. The creature demonstrated terrifying speed and strength with primitive combat tactics. The main character chose the perfect moment and grabbed the girl by the hair, and he hit her on the ground with all his might. After all, in front of him was not just a girl, but a real dragon monster. The dragon squealed as the force of the GG's blow forced him to slam his face into the ground. He placed 2 fingers on her neck, starting some kind of ritual. Standing over her, the GG said that the dragon's long hair created a hindrance in close combat, limiting its maneuverability. At this time, red smoke began to pour out of the dragon's neck, and the girl clearly wasn't happy about it. She was screaming in pain. The guy was just trying to immobilize her through her chakra points. Stimulating acupuncture points could provide an advantage by forcing the dragon to adjust its defenses. Desperate repetitions of protect merged with the distorted name of Suhyuk. The girl scraped her hands on the ground. The dragon desperately asked for the destruction of this world, begging for the end of existence, and she desperately hit the ground again, accelerating her chakra and starting to move. The release of acupuncture points surprised the guy, and it was accompanied by screams and demands to put an end to the terrible world. The creature went on to make a direct threat to kill, demonstrating a complete loss of control. The repeated death threat was made with increasing fury and determination. She rushed at him sharply and screaming, preparing to kill him with one blow. But attacking with the same techniques wouldn't achieve much. Suhyuk remembered them and quickly dodged. The guy recorded a sharp change in the behavior of the dragon, who originally protected the world. But now she asked to destroy it. And this greatly surprised the protagonist. While he was thinking, a fistful of energy was already flying towards his head, and he barely managed to dodge it. He was lucky. He would have been turned to mush by such force. He landed on the ground a few meters away from the girl, and he stopped with his foot on something. This caught his attention, and he turned around. Behind him, he saw a huge dragon carcass, and among all the balls, some kind of red glowing object. He looked closer and saw a red object that looked like a small tombstone. Suhyuk took it and hypothesized about the nature of the object, but suddenly heard a sound. He turned towards the sound, and he saw a girl who was already on top, and was trying to hit him from top to bottom. He barely dodged him again. It was clearly not he who was fighting, but just running away all the time. The guy instantly realized the critical mistake, a loss of vigilance in the heat of the fight. He dragged himself along the ground for another couple of meters. Probably all his clothes were torn and his back was covered in wounds. But the girl didn't want to stop, and she jumped again, full of energy, and she struck the ground with renewed, deadly force. This was where the main character should have been, but he was not there, and she began to look around. Suddenly, Suhyuk's hand fell on her head, and he began to pierce all her chakra points with great force and speed, forcing her not to move for a long time and not to attack. The girl started screaming. Suhyuk's urge to kill the dragon was aroused by the escalating conflict, but the creature's childish features made the guy doubt that she really should be killed. He must force himself to focus on the destruction of cosmic energy. It is this action that will allow this conflict to end. He began to gather energy in his hand, and the decisive attack of the 100 Steps Divine Fist was immediately used by the man to destroy the energy of the cosmos. But the attack did not pass, but dissipated near the red stone itself. Suhyuk was surprised because he didn't expect such a strong barrier around the cosmic energy. Meanwhile, the girl around her was becoming more and more imbued with it and was freed from paralysis. The urgent need to destroy the power source spurred Suhyuk's actions. He began to smash the stone with his bare hand. He punched faster and faster, and he saw how the stone cracked. Finally, his actions bore fruit. Seeing this, he began to hit with his fists even faster. The stone became hot, and now sparks flew from each blow. And finally, the stone split and a strong red glow appeared from it. It illuminated everything around with its light, including the face of the main character. The system notification confirmed the destruction of 100 dimensions and the assignment of the title of Intermediate Destroyer. The boy was surprised by the message, which indicated that Nephilano had been partially freed from the curse of submission. The scene changed, and we now see Suhyuk from above and the dragon girl lying on the ground. Suddenly, she started growling and trying to crawl towards the main character with her hands. The girl's eyes showed despair as she crawled and begged Suhyuk to save her. Gigi looked at all this with great bewilderment. He put his hand on her head and said that it would be very problematic if she somehow survived. Suhyuk raised his hand to strike and told her only one thing: don't be upset with him. But Nephilano begged Suhyuk to save her, her voice trembling with despair and physical pain. She said he didn't have to kill her. The creature offered an alternative to killing, promising eternal gratitude for sparing life. The dragon added that he would also remember the insult if Suhyuk chose a cruel decision. In desperation, the girl was ready to swear anything just to make him believe her. Suddenly, she asked the main character if he had the Akashic records. Gigi was shocked by how she found out about this. After all, she was seeing him for the first time. Nefalano told him about the awakening of the dragon's eye, which is why she knows everything. The main character was surprised. Suddenly, a crack appeared on the ground. Soon, this world would be destroyed. Nefalano grabbed the main character's hand and shouted an oath in dragon speech, begging the guy to just let her live. The girl burst into tears and swore in the name of the ancient dragon that she would never betray Suhyuk. The Akashic system has notified the ancient dragon Nefalano of his desire to enter into an oath of friendship, with consequences for anyone who breaks the oath. While the main character was thinking about such conditions, the volcano on the top of the mountain began to spew out a bunch of lava. Having already decided what he would do, Suhyuk rushed forward, and he took Nefalano with him, who asked in shock what the man was doing, her voice expressing obvious confusion. Suhyuk ordered the dragon to remain still, declaring his temporary decision to spare her life. But he added that the final decision regarding her would come later. The scene changed, and now we see a white car parked in the forest. The man announced his immediate departure, demanding the dragon prepare for an extreme ride, but there was no answer. Gigi turned around and looked at his companion. She sat dirty and depressed in the passenger seat, silently staring at the main character and tucking her legs under her. Suhyuk exhaled and said that he couldn't take her out like that. I wonder what'll do. But in the next frame, he was already stepping on the gas, and the car was driving rapidly through the forest, digging the ground with its tires. While they were trying to quickly get away from this world, huge clots of lava reached the forest, almost touching the car. The girl was already wearing Gigi's jacket and mentioned Nezer's condition, who, according to her, had collapsed. The girl asked the boy where exactly they were heading now. Suhyuk put on his mask and announced his return to his home world, and at that very second, they found themselves in a portal, barely escaping from a world that had already been almost completely destroyed. At this point, the scene switched to a huge military checkpoint right next to the portal. One of the soldiers noticed that Bezimiani had been missing for a month, while another suggested his possible death. But suddenly the warrior's face lit up with surprise, and he turned his gaze to the portal. At that very second, the main character's car flew out of the portal above their heads. As soon as she stopped, other soldiers immediately arrived, eager to ask, what happened inside? The sudden appearance of the car from the portal raised a big question in everyone around. But upon closer inspection, they recognized Nameless's car. This caused a wild joy among the crowd. They shouted, rejoicing at how the main character managed to clear this portal. Looking at this whole crowd, the military breathed a sigh of relief. All this commotion would cause them a lot of problems. The scene changed, and now multiple reporters were taking pictures of the performance in front of them. The Vice transmitted the official message confirming the triumphant return of the Nameless One after his great feat. The audience discussed the achievement. Some admired it. Others boasted about their predictions about the fate of the main character. The discussion moved on to comparisons with other hunters, Beg Mukok, Vladimir, and Manfred Rosenberg. Now everyone has recognized Suhyuk as the third strongest on this list. The scene changed again to the main character's car, which was driving fast along the highway. Suhyuk sighed as he removed his mask, noting the difficulty of his recent exit from the test. He suggested that the dragon conclude their postponed conversation right now. The girl agreed. The guy asked to explain the essence of the dragon speech that Nefalano had mentioned earlier. The girl defined dragon speech as a special treaty between the dragon and the world. Suhyuk demanded a simpler explanation. Nefalano repeated the definition, looking at her hands in embarrassment, not knowing what else to say. Suhyuk compared the explanation to a meaningless proverb. The man clarified the difference between ordinary promises and the dragon speech oath. The dragon declared that it was impossible to break such an oath without complete self-destruction. Suhyuk asked if this vow was similar to the curse of Nezer's world that had previously bound Nefalano. The girl sadly lowered her head and silently thought, remembering her terrible situation. Nefalano categorically rejected the comparison of Nezer's curse with dragon speech. The girl emphasized the fundamental difference. Nezer was a forced enslaver, and the oath was her choice. This dimension imposed a false consciousness, completely controlling her will. Breaking the dragon speech oath entails the consequences materializing in reality, Nefalano explained. Suhyuk suddenly remembered her earlier words about dying when Nezer fell. The boy compared this curse to hypnosis, forcibly altering the dragon's consciousness. Nezer's control was a suppression of the will, and an oath is a conscious vow. Dragon speech is a mutual vow, however, the violation of which entails complete punishment and the destruction of the world. Soo-hyuk acknowledged the supreme reliability of such oaths, demonstrating his understanding. The man steered the conversation toward the main issue at hand, demanding clarity. The girl tensed. The boy demanded the precise details of Nefalano's proposed oath of friendship. The girl hesitated, warning him that the necessary explanations might take a long time. Nefalano suddenly stopped herself, feeling a strange discomfort in her body. Soo-hyuk noticed her tension and asked about the problem, but the girl started to fuss and said that she urgently needed to go. Soo-hyuk was shocked and asked where. The dragon girl cried out in fear, feeling a strange, tingling sensation in her lower body. She couldn't hold it in for long. The guy was shocked that she hadn't told him about this before. Soo-hyuk cursed the unexpected complication that had interrupted their serious conversation and slammed on the brakes, and the car began to stop abruptly right on the highway. The boy panicked at the thought that someone would pee on his carpet, which was worth over 3 billion won. He was overcome with rage because he couldn't find a suitable place for the girl right away. Soo-hyuk shouted encouragingly that they were almost there, asking if she could hold back. The girl said no, not really. The guy roared that she would die if she peed herself right in the car. The scene changed. The hero stopped near some huge shopping center. The visitor indignantly pointed out to Soo-hyuk that the dragon had been brought to the men's restroom. The man indignantly asked why they chose the men's room when there was a perfectly good women's room. Soo-hyuk calmly stated that Nefalana belonged to the male gender, despite his appearance. The interlocutor retorted that anyone would see the girl, accusing the guy of bullying. Soo-hyuk insisted on the dragon's male sex, remaining unperturbed. Baldi acknowledged the impossibility of personal verification and his own uncertainty about the creature's gender. Gigi stood and understood that sending him to the women's restroom also seemed like an unsafe decision. Soo-hyuk explained the potential danger of Nefalano, especially due to her recent unpredictable transformations. The man concluded that it was easier to endure the discontent of some people than to risk the lives of others. The bald man, in turn, stood and, closing his eyes, was angry. Because the youth of the present time are not at all well-mannered. Already in the restroom, the girl was sitting on the toilet and peeing with all her might. With a sigh of satisfaction, Nefalano emerged from the restroom and announced her return to life. Soo-hyuk ordered her to move and told her that she better not behave like that in public places. The guy admitted that he himself does not know the gender of this dragon, and explained the increased attention to her due to her unusual appearance. The man asked directly about the dragon's gender, receiving a counter-question about what gender is. Soo-hyuk rephrases the question, clarifying whether the creature in front of him is a girl or a man. Nefalano smiled and declared herself genderless, neither one nor the other, or both. And all this is because not much time has passed since the dragon was a cub. Sexual characteristics have not yet fully appeared. She recounts how the elders predicted that the final determination of gender would occur within the next few years. Nefalano asked Soo-hyuk about the importance of her gender. He explained it as simple curiosity, and he offered juice, hiding his embarrassment with laughter. The dragon supported this idea. Soo-hyuk added that a creature's value is not determined by gender. All that matters is its practical utility. They drank coffee and Coca-Cola on a bench. The man returned to the question of the essence of the oath of friendship, which he had interrupted earlier. Nefalano recalled their earlier conversation about the oath before the toilet incident. The dragon clearly defined the oath as a mutual vow of friendship and unbreakable loyalty. They would never betray each other. Soo-hyuk acknowledged the lack of traps in the conditions, given the nature of dragon speech. Nefalano emphasized the dragon's reluctance to befriend creatures weaker than themselves. That's why the girl named Soo-hyuk as the only person who impressed her in her entire life. The dragon admired Soo-hyuk's achievements despite his modest physical attributes and lack of mana. The man noted the difference between Nefalano and the stereotypical proud dragons of legend, especially when the girl solemnly swore, in the name of the ancient dragon, never to betray the guy. Soo-hyuk asked if the vow would become the basis for a permanent partnership. He wanted that so much. The boy formally accepted the offer to swear an oath of friendship and extended his hand to the dragon. The girl was surprised that the guy finally decided to enter into an agreement with her. Nefalano swore a full oath of allegiance in the name of the ancient dragon. This promise of friendship was lifelong, cementing the union of dragon and human. The system granted Soo-hyuk a new title, Friend of the Dragon. He also mentioned several additional conditions to the contract. The guy's first demand was to shorten the impractically long name, Nefalano. Nefalano immediately suggested the shortened name Feli for everyday use. Soo-hyuk moved on to the second condition, which concerned making their relationship public. The dragon was surprised, and the guy reminded him of the 1,000-year age difference between them. The guy explained the need to avoid strange looks from people around him. He asked Feli to exercise caution when interacting in public places. The girl assumed he was referring to the use of polite expressions. Gigi clarified that formality was only necessary in front of other people. Feli immediately insisted on training. The guy considered the discussion exhausted and suggested continuing to move towards the goal. The scene changed to the view of a huge metropolis with a lot of people and cars. Then it moved on to a huge, tall building. Our heroes was standing there too, and Feli was delighted, assuming they had arrived home. The man said he only had a meeting there. Someone in a yellow suit walked down the corridor and asked about the purpose of the visit to the building. Having stopped, the vice president finally confirmed his arrival at the training complex by telephone. But immediately, Yellow was shocked by what he saw there. The vice president was simply shocked by the sudden appearance of the snake carcass and piles of dragon trophies. Gigi greeted the vice chairman. The man apologized for being forced to call due to the enormous size of the hall. Soo-hyuk handed over the byproducts of the raid to Oshinwoo Guild for processing. The guy explained his choice of a trusted person to sell damaged dragon scales and skins. He expressed confidence in the practical application of the materials despite the defects. The man moved on to the final question of the meeting, pausing. The topic of discussion was the human body of Nephilano and its nature. The girl explained that the dragon's observable form is merely a shell. She emphasized the importance of a living being's essence over its outward form. The vice chairman acknowledged the dragon's strength, which surpassed most awakened ones. He assured her that completing the paperwork and finding a place to live would be straightforward. The man expressed hope for fruitful cooperation with his vice president in the future. Before leaving, he asked Soo-hyuk to set aside a day soon. The reason is the readiness of what was previously agreed upon with the guy. Soo-hyuk recalled a similar request before entering the Nether dimension. He doesn't remember what he was even talking about, but he agrees with him. He asked the dragon to stay here and confirmed Oshinwoo's assistance in matters of contacts and the current situation. Soo-hyuk asked the vice chairman to arrange mobile phone service for himself. Yellow nodded and said he would do it. The man suggested that Feli write down his number after receiving the phone and call immediately. She hesitated, looked embarrassed, and agreed. The guy patted her on the head with warm feelings. He assured the dragon that he had no plans to abandon him, asking him to remain calm. Feli briefly confirmed her complete trust in Soo-hyuk's words. The scene changed to a sunset street with cars and private houses. The main character finally crosses the threshold of his home. He stretched his arms inside, feeling the long-awaited relief after a long absence. Soo-hyuk's father looks at the newcomer with surprise, hesitantly pronouncing his son's name upon meeting him. The young man answers his father in surprise, asking the reason for his unexpected presence at home during the day. The father explains his unplanned day off and late rise by immediately offering his son a shared meal. Soo-hyuk confirms his hunger, admitting that he expected the apartment to be empty and planned to eat alone. The man mentally notes the appearance of an unforeseen factor that changes his initial plans. Soo-hyuk decides to take advantage of the moment and tell his father the important news right now at the table. After some time, the table was already set. After all, my father loved to cook and did it very well. The young man is pleasantly surprised to recognize a familiar dish, plain rice with soy sauce and egg. The father notes with a touch of nostalgia that they haven't eaten this favorite dish together in a long time, but he warns that it only seems simple. It still requires skill to prepare. He explains the subtleties of cooking to his son in detail, the amount of rice, the consistency of the egg, the balance of sauces. The father proudly presents his signature recipe, perfected over years of practice. Soo-hyuk takes up the spoon with gusto, preparing to taste his father's culinary skills. And after the first bite of the dish into his mouth, it was as if lightning struck him. Genuine delight is reflected on the boy's face. He highly praises the dish and his father's skill. They ate together and chatted. Their father advised them to complement the perfect taste of noodles with a piece of spicy kimchi. The father, pleased with the reaction, suddenly asks about the details of his son's recent trip to Pohang. Soo-hyuk recalls the calm sea and the general atmosphere of the seaside town of Pohang with a slightly embarrassed expression. The father expresses bewilderment at his son's sudden change in route from a hike to a visit to a friend in another city. Father reminds him of the brief text message instead of a meaningful conversation. Soo-hyuk justifies it by citing the rush of the situation. The man suspects his son of harboring a hidden grudge and carefully prepares to ask an important personal question. The boy tenses up internally, fearing that his father has most likely already guessed about his unspoken secret. The father smiles and admits the obviousness of his guess, Has Soo-hyuk finally found a girlfriend? Genuine surprise is reflected on the father's face after his son's negative answer. Soo-hyuk counters the question with a joke about not having time for romance, trying to ease the tension. Father insists that dates are needed during free moments, before adult life completely consumes them. The man immediately reassures his son, suggesting that he forget about financial obstacles to the relationship. The father's quiet voice sounds guilty, as he vows to make up for past inaction as the head of the family. Soo-hyuk gently stops him, forgiving his father for his past mistakes and urging him to look forward. The boy reminds us of his adult status, which does not require his father's full financial support. The father agrees, proudly admitting that his son has long since become an independent man. He shouldn't have treated him like a child. Soo-hyuk says that this is not what he meant, because from now on, they will overcome all family difficulties together as equals. The boy takes a deep breath and confesses to his father his awakening as a system player. The father, hiding his anxiety, advises extreme caution when using new abilities because it is very dangerous. Soo-hyuk apologizes with a trembling voice for keeping silent for so long about his true nature, but then he looks up and tells the truth about himself. He is the Nameless One. The father was shocked by such a confession, but now everything fell into place. The son's frequent absences were connected to his awakened status. Everything made sense. Time passed slowly. The father was silent and only sighed. Soo-hyuk internally acknowledges the irreversibility of the revelation that occurred at the table. If only his father would accept this. Finally, the father broke the silence, laughing at the enormity of the news. He assumed his wife and daughter had known the truth before he did. The guy apologizes for the prolonged silence. After all, he could have told me this earlier. The father interrupts the apology, acknowledging the difficulty of the situation and his son's right to independence. He reaffirms his trust in his adult son by allowing him to act at his own discretion. This touches the boy. Pride and a hint of sadness echo in the father's voice as he watches his son grow into a man. There was much he didn't understand until today. The son's sincere gratitude is accompanied by tears of joy, and the father immediately suggests finishing the meal before it gets cold. The boy calmly agrees to return to their interrupted dinner. Some time passed. Finally, it was deep evening. Soo-hyuk lay in bed and felt the heavy burden that had been pressing on his heart for a long time disappear. He approves of his decision to come out, rejoicing in the family's seamless acceptance, and he mentally prepares for a new stage in his life once the final barriers are removed. Suddenly, the telephone on the table next to the bed rang. New messages from Baek-yeon cause slight confusion in the guy. Baek-yeon's message asks about her weekend availability and reminds her to meet up. Soo-hyuk is surprised to realize how much time has passed since their last conversation. The girl insistently specifies a specific day for the meeting, Saturday or Sunday. She suggests Saturday, receiving the guy's laconic consent. Soo-hyuk studies the unfamiliar number on the screen. Without recognizing the sender of the new message, Feli asks to save her contact information, introducing herself with a short name for future communication. The guy notes the surprisingly quick response after saving the number. The message received from Vice President Oh Shin-woo raises eyebrows and raises suspicions about problems, but when he opened a chat with him on Messenger, the guy was in complete shock and didn't understand. What is this? And how is this possible? The vice president announces the start of processing a massive shipment of trophies from the world of Nether, valued at 3 billion. He clarifies that the price does not include the Nephalano shell, and Soo-hyuk mentally calculates his total net worth. He already has 1.5 billion. He anticipates a sharp increase in his fortune after selling his remaining assets. And then, after making a couple of calculations, he stared in shock at the phone screen. A quick calculation showed that his account was worth almost 10 billion. Soo-hyuk was simply overjoyed by this amount. Soo-hyuk's sister watches her brother's strange behavior in the room with bewilderment. She notes his complete absorption in himself, which is why he didn't even notice her arrival. The guy is overwhelmed with joy when he realizes his new financial situation. The night passed, and finally the sun rose beyond the horizon. Morning had come. Breakfast was already ready in the kitchen of their house. The father once again demonstrated his culinary talent. The family was gathered around the table, and the father called Soo-hyuk to the table, noting the appetizing aroma of the finished dish. Entering the kitchen at the table, he immediately addressed all family members in order to tell them the good news. The guy proudly tells his family about his wealth, admitting to insomnia from happiness. All family members were shocked by this news, and also by the appearance of the main character. The father asks incredulously if it is true that his brother earned 10 billion as an awakened one. Soo-hyuk confirms the amount, clarifying that the final payment will take place after the sale of the remaining items. The man announces the end of the family's financial problems and promises a life of luxury. The father thanks him but doubts his right to accept such money. The boy insists on family ties. Soo-hyuk suggests moving to a better house. His father acknowledges his son's accomplishments, who says this is just the beginning. His mother thinks it's a dream, and his sister offers to pinch her. Some more time passed, and the guy was already walking down the street at full speed. Soo-hyuk looked at his phone and thought about wanting to focus on portal hunting. But he reminded himself of the unfinished business of trophies and other obligations. The most important matter is an urgent visit to Oh Shin-woo, requested by the vice president. The young man decides not to postpone the visit, since the route leads past the guild. Suddenly, a strange guy in a business suit and in a strange pose stands in his way. The stranger politely introduces himself to Soo-hyuk and looks at him. He was standing and waiting for him here. The guy hands him a business card and introduces himself as Abe Tadayoshi from the Japan Awakened Association. The diplomat expresses his desire to speak with the protagonist alone. Soo-hyuk acknowledges the fact that his identity as the Nameless One has been exposed even in Japan. The boy openly expresses bewilderment at the reason for the Japanese guest's visit. Why are they coming? To look at him? Abe assures him the conversation will be brief and suggests changing the location for a private conversation. Gigi says he's fine with it as is. Soo-hyuk rejects the offer, and the Japanese man asks if Soo-hyuk is ready for the Nameless One's identity to be revealed to the world. Suddenly, a light blast of energy hits his face. Soo-hyuk's raised fist stops the guest's speech, signaling a change in the tone of the conversation. The guy declares his integrity. Mutual respect guarantees peace. Aggression, a response. The Japanese man loses his composure, irritated by Soo-hyuk's tone. But then the main character's hand falls on the diplomat's shoulder. Soo-hyuk asks sharply and menacingly, full of energy, whether the guest understood his position after a clear warning. Convinced of the futility of the dialogue, the guy announces his immediate departure. But suddenly something stopped him again and surprised him. What was going on? A bunch of other cars from companies and their representatives appeared in front of him. That's the price of popularity. The appearance of a new stranger causes Soo-hyuk to exclaim in bewilderment. The woman introduces herself as Isabella Johansson, blocking the guy's path. She immediately reveals her affiliation with the American Association of Awakened People. Soo-hyuk dryly acknowledges the obvious fact of her origin. The guy notes the beginning of a series of visits and anticipates an extremely busy day. He abruptly pulled out his phone, and he began to stare blankly at it, ignoring all external factors trying to distract him. Isabella politely inquires about Soo-hyuk's other appointments, receiving confirmation that the guy is very busy right now. The American woman apologizes for the suddenness of her visit to her boyfriend. She suggests choosing a convenient time, but Soo-hyuk immediately rejects the idea of moving to the United States and passes her by. Isabella, shocked by the refusal, tries to at least offer to have lunch together. The woman persistently begs for a short meeting over a cup of coffee. Soo-hyuk agrees, with one caveat. The meeting will take place much later. Isabella agrees to wait until dawn for the opportunity to talk to Mr. Yang Soo-hyuk. The guy calls her back late in the evening and politely ends the current conversation with the American. But as he continues down the road, he realizes that the problem is not solved at all. Everything remains the same. Soo-hyuk is thinking about how to solve this problem with numerous uninvited visitors. He decides to work with all visitors at once to save time. Suddenly, he jumps up and rushes forward. He quickly makes his way through the crowd of stunned scout agents, leaving a trail of energy behind him, and he soars into the air with his energetic jumps. A quick analysis reveals that they are all foreigners. The man rejects the very idea of wasting precious time on such intrusive contacts. Suddenly, Soo-hyuk notices an unusual presence that has gone unnoticed for a long time. A guy in a suit started following him, and the agents decided to act more decisively. The guy jumped onto some balcony and decided to stop to negotiate with this agent. The guy notes his high speed of movement, which is inaccessible to ordinary pursuit. The Chinese man enthusiastically confirms Soo-hyuk's unique ability and talents. The stranger excitedly introduces himself as Nasa Zhang of Shaanxi, recognizing the Nameless One. He expresses respect when they meet, and the main character notes the agent's combat training by his movements. The Chinese guest happily confirms the accuracy of the observation about his mastery of martial arts. Soo-hyuk notes with interest the rarity of practitioners of traditional martial arts in our time. The guy remembers Vladimir's theory about the origins, when he directly asked about the main characters belonging to them. Nasojan confirms rumors about the heirs of ancient styles, and speculation about the status of Soo-hyuk, a Korean martial artist. Soo-hyuk clearly identifies the guild as the guest's true affiliation. He is not from the association. The visitor timidly asks for a demonstration of his skills, but is politely refused due to Soo-hyuk's busy schedule. The Chinese man politely hands Soo-hyuk his business card after receiving preliminary consent for further communication. The boy reads the name of the guild Jungmumun, Heaven's Gate of Martial Arts, on the business card he received. Nasojung mentions belonging to the 8 Universals, an elite group of Chinese guilds. He clarifies that the guild is led by Chun Yuhan and is the largest in China among the awakened. The envoy emphasizes Jungmumun's deep interest in Soo-hyuk. The Chinese man conveys the desire not only of the leader but also of the guild elders to invite him to Shanxi. Nasojun offers the opportunity to establish camaraderie between martial arts practitioners. Soo-hyuk thoughtfully connects China and the concept of origins mentioned earlier. This proposal sparked genuine interest in him. The scene changes, and now we see some kind of skyscraper and people around it. Inside the building itself, there were also many people, pavilions, pillars, and halls. Passers-by notice an unfamiliar child in light clothing, surprised by his choice of outfit for cold weather. It was the dragon girl Nefalano, who was sitting on the floor in her light white dress. Suddenly, someone approaches her and mentions that the guild vice president has arranged temporary housing for a new companion. It was Soo-hyuk. He asked how long she had been waiting at the entrance to the guild building. Soo-hyuk notes the dragon's new clothes. She happily asks him how the outfit matches her appearance. Nefalano explains the choice of practical clothing from the many options purchased by the guild. The guy expresses concern for her health because she is wearing a summer dress in the middle of the winter cold. The dragon is genuinely perplexed, not understanding the very concept of cold as physical discomfort. And then, remembering what it is, she confidently declares her complete immunity to low temperatures thanks to her nature. And to high temperatures too. Soo-hyuk recalls the term Hanso Bulchim, a state of immunity to temperature extremes. This is characteristic of dragons. The guy points out the complete visual identity of the dragon to the human girl for those around him. He emphasizes her lack of understanding of social norms leading to her provocative appearance and throws his jacket over her. Soo-hyuk asks to change her outfit because of the stares people are giving her in a public place. The scene changed, and we saw a man in his signature yellow suit walking down the corridor. The guild vice president greets Soo-hyuk and Nefalano at the entrance to the office building. The man is surprised by the guy's early appearance because the vice president himself was a little late, and was late. The vice president, inquiring about the couple's joint arrival, Soo-hyuk clarified that the dragon had been waiting for him at the entrance long before his arrival. The protagonist suggests finding a teacher to help Nefalano adapt to human society. The vice president agrees with the dress code comment, but expresses doubt about Feely's current outfit. He gets to the heart of the matter. The vice president invites Soo-hyuk and Nefalano to follow him deeper into the building. They were already in the elevator, and the vice president was pressing the button for the 8th floor. The man reveals the exclusivity of this location, accessible only to select members of the association. The group descends to the 8th underground floor, where the vice president activates the door mechanism. Soo-hyuk looks around the unfamiliar high-tech space beyond the threshold in surprise. The vice president confirms the guy's guess. This is a secret research laboratory. The association's expanded functionality extends beyond administrative tasks. Most strategic projects are implemented in this hidden area. The unfamiliar scientist happily greets the vice president and Soo-hyuk. The guy was shocked. This is a real dwarf. The researcher notes the guy's neatness, contrary to the rumors circulating about him. The bearded man studies with interest the legendary Nameless One, about whom he has heard so much from his colleagues. The vice president formally introduces Soo-hyuk to the scientists, and Wade states his name. He introduces himself briefly, wearily noting the string of acquaintances he's made that day. Soo-hyuk mentally notes the abnormally high number of new contacts in a short period of time. The scientist turns his attention to the girl next to them, trying to politely inquire about her identity. She turned around sharply and said contemptuously, "Her name is Nefalano." Soo-hyuk then thought that he should definitely teach the dragon some basic manners after she ignored his greeting. Wade interrupts his colleague, reminding him that business matters take priority, and urges the group to move forward, announcing that the equipment is fully prepared for the project demonstration, and several pairs of legs in different outfits moved forward. Soo-hyuk is impressed by the unexpectedly large scale of the association's underground laboratory. The young man asks about the logistics of building such a complex near Seoul, without making any public announcements. The vice president acknowledges the complexity, but insists on the facility's strategic value. It reveals the years of preparation for the project, which began long before current events and speaks of humanity's helplessness in the face of extraterrestrial threats before the awakening. Scientific developments became a key response to the crisis, facilitated by favorable circumstances. The vice president emphasizes the danger of being completely dependent on a limited number of awakened ones. He cites his acquaintance with Wade's genius as one of the decisive factors in the success of the enterprise. Wade impatiently demands to stop the drawn-out conversations and move on to the practical part. And they went further through the huge Advanced Scientific Underground Center. Suddenly, Wade shows them a new invention, a huge robot in a glass capsule. Soo-hyuk recognizes the design as advanced power armor, familiar from technological fantasies. The vice president confirms the guests and reveals the official name of the development, Hyper Armor. Scientists invite the young man to test the equipment, despite it being a prototype. They claim the revolutionary power of the prototype is capable of changing global standards. The vice president offers Soo-hyuk the honor of becoming the first operator of humanity's newest invention. Wade stood at the terminal at this time and activated the armor. The doors to the capsule swung open, and before Soo-hyuk, this new hyper armor, a universal powerful weapon, stood in full view. Suddenly, the robot armor's eyes lit up, and it flashed red sensors at the main character. The terminal screen displays the registration procedure for the operator under the code name First. Soo-hyuk smiles and compares the process of donning the armor to becoming a futuristic Iron Man. He reaches out his hand to her. And then, in the chest of the armor, a huge blue reactor full of energy flares up. Suddenly, the armor flew towards the main character, sticking to his body. He was already completely inside her. Only her face remained exposed. It was really cool. And then the helmet slammed shut. It was very dark inside the armor. Then some piece of light began to penetrate into the eyes, and the hero saw the outlines of his hands on the monitors inside. Now he could see everything around him. He couldn't believe his eyes. The robot armor on him sparkled with energy. An incredible feeling. He clenched his fist and felt all the strength and power. This invention was simply incredible. The dwarf immediately asked the protagonist, "How's it going? Isn't it amazing?" The guy expressed admiration as he assessed the high-tech suit presented to him. The hyper armor appeared bulky and inconvenient at first glance, but once put on, the suit felt like a natural extension of my own body. With its help, the hero could do a lot of things. The scientist immediately invited Soo-hyuk to follow him, promising to show him something more. He opened the door with the imprint of his dwarf hand, and the hermetically sealed armored door opened in front of them. A man shows Soo-hyuk a spacious testing ground, waiting for his assessment. The scientist laughs at the boy's stunned reaction and asks him to be careful. Vice reminded them of the location right below Egido, and Soo-hyuk calmly confirmed that everything would be fine. And a second later, another door opened. A bunch of combat drones flew out of it. An important clarification. The drones will fire live ammunition during the tests. The signal to begin the test sounded, and good luck was wished to the operator in the armor. Immediately, the drones began shooting at the hero with all their guns, but he ran quickly in his new super armor, avoiding their bullets. In response, quickly destroying a bunch of drones at once in a few seconds. In his new armor, he managed to do this with one deft blow. One of the observers is amazed by the speed and the result. Only 5 minutes. Asking the vice president about his time on this test. Answer: it took 50 minutes to destroy 300 targets last time. And Soo-hyuk completed a similar task in just 5 minutes, causing shock. Now the drones were finished. And the GG's hands and armor were even smoking from how hard and fast he was destroying them. A pile of broken equipment surrounded the perfect technological armor and the perfect operator in it. But despite the impressive power, the guy still criticized the armor design, suggesting improvements. He immediately turned towards his stunned comrades. Later, the scientist justified himself by admitting that he was consumed by admiration for the productivity. The researcher took a serious approach when asking about specific complaints about appearance. The guy notes the overly heavy and inhuman appearance of the suit. Realizing the vagueness of the wording, Soo-hyuk asks not to attach any importance to his words, but the scientist couldn't ignore the design comment, declaring the armor his greatest masterpiece. The boy's sudden confusion after the harsh reaction to his words. The researcher acknowledges the importance of Soo-hyuk's opinion and is ready to take into account his preferences in the refinement. The guy suggests improving the armor's portability for ease of storage and quick use. The scientist is inspired by the idea, considering modifying all the contours to make them more compact. The project will require the help of magicians and expensive materials, and perhaps even alchemical interventions. But the association guarantees full support. That's what Vice promised. This was followed by the scientists' joyful reaction to the prospects for improving hyper armor. But Vice in Yellow moved on to a new topic concerning Nefelano. He addressed the dragoness, mentioning her shed scales. The diplomat in Yellow confirmed the talk about dragon scales as a material. He put forward his proposal to use the scales to upgrade armor and create equipment for sale. The guy calmly agrees, since she brought the scales precisely for these purposes. The dragon girl doesn't see the problem, calling the scales simply a trace of her past. Soo-hyuk requests that a hidden weapon storage compartment be added to the armor, but the vice president can be sure of the technical feasibility only after consulting with a colleague. And now the guy could already formulate specific requests for improving the armor. Soon the sun had almost set behind the horizon. A wonderful view of the skyscrapers. The guy walked slowly down the street and looked at his phone. Although there wasn't much time, the sun had already set behind the horizon. Apparently winter would soon arrive. And then he turned to Nefelano, who interrupted her thoughts. He immediately asked the dragon a direct question about her plans for the near future. The guy reminds the dragon of her new status: housing, registration as an awakened one, and Earth citizenship. Soo-hyuk asks if Nefelano has any specific life goals in his new place. The dragon girl admits that she doesn't have any grand life plans as she sees it. Nefelano's main desire was to escape from the old world, to survive and avoid loneliness. The dragon emphasizes that her thoughts never went beyond these basic aspirations. This shocked the main character, but Nefelano states that all of her initial goals on Earth have already been achieved. The dragon's question unexpectedly turns to Soo-hyuk's own plans for the future. It directly indicates his pragmatic interest in its possible usefulness for his purposes. Soo-hyuk reveals a long-standing idea about creating his own guild for systematic work. The guy explains the need for a guild by the impossibility of covering the entire world alone, or being forever dependent on Oshinwu. Soo-hyuk names the current key task as passing through portals above level 10. He is confident in his abilities to solo the 11th level portal after his experience in the Dragon's Lair. The guy points out the real problem: a sharp jump in difficulty starting with level 12 portals. Soo-hyuk soberly assesses the current chances of success in passing through such portals as extremely low. He sees the necessary condition as the growth of his own strength to the level of harmony. Soo-hyuk's sudden question concerns Nefelano's ability in magical arts. The dragon is confident in the possibility of mastering magic through training, which the guy immediately takes into account in his plans. Soo-hyuk realizes the strategic advantage if Nefelano truly masters magic, and the scene changed to a huge shopping mall, in which, as usual, there were a lot of people. The cat seller Nay is surprised by the question about the magic book, and by Soo-hyuk's question to him. The guy asks about the possibility of learning magic without textbooks, hoping for her knowledge. The saleswoman sits and chuckles, because she has one thought about them. She guesses that Soo-hyuk plans to teach magic to someone else. For example, this girl. Soo-hyuk honestly admits that he has no talent for learning magic. Nay suspects the riskiness of the guy's plan, causing his bewilderment. The merchant identifies Nefelano as a young but high-ranking dragon. Her originally noble origin of dragon blood is noted. Nay is interested in the world Nefelano came from. The dragon refuses to reveal information about his homeland. The guy immediately softened the atmosphere, joking about the dragon's coldness towards strangers, and reminding her that she is now an earthling. And the cat explains this behavior by their traditional closed magical traditions, and it emphasizes the exclusively oral principle of transmitting magic, without written sources in their culture. Soo-hyuk understands the difficulty of learning through oral transmission. Nay mentions the existence of rule breakers, and that she has to deal with such rule breakers on a regular basis. She's willing to help for a fee. The price she's quoted for a recommendation is 100 million won. The guy is shocked by the announced amount of the reward. Nay clarifies that we are talking about 1 billion won. Soo-hyuk is shocked by the tenfold increase in the cost of services. The guy doesn't believe that even between them, such a rate for services applies. Nay calls 1 billion a preferential price, given their acquaintance. Nefelano offers to earn the required amount for Soo-hyuk himself. The dragon explains his desire to study magic in order to become more useful to the boy, which stuns the boy. Soo-hyuk promises an official contract and a large share of the profits for the girl after creating a guild. The guy increasingly notes his brotherly attitude towards Nefelano, comparing her to his younger sister Soo-yi. And then, a hairy, fluffy paw hands them a phone and asks the main character for his number. The merchant promised to contact him after the magician was ready for training. After some time, they were already home. It was evening. Soo-hyuk remembers the business card he received earlier. The guy finds Isabella Johansson's contacts and decides to call her. He apologizes for calling the American representative late. Isabella insistently assures him of her readiness to communicate at any time, calling him special. Soo-hyuk suggests meeting, mentioning his new free time. The American woman confirms his location, intending to come herself. She estimates the travel time at about 30 minutes and confirms their imminent meeting. The guy is surprised by her willingness to make a personal visit, anticipating generous conditions, and it confirms the traditional American principle of investing only in the best. After some time, the expensive car was already driving along the highway. Inside, Isabella happily greeted Soo-hyuk upon meeting him, who was shocked by such an expensive car. The woman praises him, repeating his message of exceptionalism. The representative emphasizes that the U.S. doesn't waste resources on futile endeavors. Soo-hyuk repeats his morning refusal to immigrate, despite offers. Isabella suggests that Soo-hyuk retain his Korean citizenship and obtain American citizenship for dual citizenship. It confirms the agreement of the proposal between the U.S. and Korean governments, with a positive reaction from politicians. The guy notes the ban on dual citizenship in Korea, except in special cases. Very special cases. Isabella acknowledges the uniqueness of the situation, pointing to the Korean authorities' ignorance of his identity. The American is confident that it will be possible to formalize the registration without revealing his identity as the nameless one. Soo-hyuk doubts the wisdom of such a large-scale effort for his sake. Isabella insists on the exceptional value of the nameless, justifying all measures. The United States estimates his strength to be at least that of an awakened 8th universal rank. The guy expresses sincere surprise at such a high assessment of his abilities. He recalls that he has only been awakened for 3 months, emphasizing the uniqueness of his talent. Despite an offer of $100 million in advance and better terms, Soo-hyuk firmly rejects the contract. Isabella, in shock, points out the limited opportunities for his growth in Korea. The guy retorts that the United States is also incapable of becoming a vessel that can accommodate his ambitions and power. This message from the main character finally finishes off the American representative. He politely ends the meeting, and Isabella wishes the hero a safe return home. The American woman acknowledges yet another refusal, noting it in her report. Soo-hyuk acknowledges the uniqueness of her decision, compared to the expected reaction of anyone else. The guy explains his refusal by his connections with Oh Sin-woo and his desire to maintain independence from any forces. Now it's time to find your balance. The guy suddenly notices something behind him. Suddenly, he turns to the invisible pursuer, demanding that he stop following him. The man who was hiding acknowledges Soo-hyuk's discovery with a slight chuckle. The Chinese agent apologizes for the covert surveillance, explaining it by his impatience to meet. The guy suggests immediately ending negotiations with the Chinese delegation. The messenger thanks and offers to move to the prepared place. Soo-hyuk agreed, allowing the representative to act as a guide, and they ran across the rooftops using their abilities. The massive structure was presented as an overseas training base for the Chinese Guild. The representative proudly demonstrates the unique capabilities of their infrastructure. The guy interrupts the conversation, inviting them inside to share combat experience. As he enters the building, he makes eye contact with 2 security guards and steps over the threshold. Immediately, Soo-hyuk feels the effect of the formation, increasing his skill by 20%. He learns the training formation by recalling past knowledge. The thought of the benefits of the bald hyuksanage when working with such techniques brought him back to pleasant, distant memories, and the Chinese agent stood all this time with outstretched arms and waited for Soo-hyuk's assessment of what he saw. He confidently states that this is why China can be called a great nation, thanks to technology. He emphasizes the exclusivity of their formations, martial arts, and training systems. It confirms the accelerated growth of skills within the formation. And he repeated the thesis that such results are unattainable for other countries. They will all be on their knees. The agent recounted a prophecy of world domination by their Chinese martial arts and a mention of a victory over Baek Muhak. Then he made a provocative claim about the Chinese origins of all martial styles and invited him to become a Chinese citizen. Soo-hyuk just sighed very heavily, and he ignores the provocation, considering it unworthy of a response. His casually voiced disdain provokes an angry reaction from the agent. Soo-hyuk counters, calling his opponent's statements nonsense. He quotes an ancient proverb about strength from the world of martial arts. The boy challenges him, demanding proof of Nasojung's right to be arrogant. The Chinese recognize the complexity of the Nameless One's character, and at first, simply defends himself against his strong energy. The Chinese man's respect for Soo-hyuk's skill is mixed with condemnation of his insolence. Na-so-jung is outraged by the disregard for China's display of power, but now his peaceful offer of annexation is being replaced by a threat to correct the relationship by force. Soo-hyuk exposes the envoy's false friendliness. The guy takes up the challenge by questioning someone else's ability to fix things. The Chinese man is becoming increasingly angry. There is not a drop of his former kindness left in his gaze. Na-so-jung explodes with insults towards Soo-hyuk and tries to hit him. The Chinese man's rapid approach is seen as a tactical error on the part of the protagonist, but he immediately understands that everything is wrong. This is not a mistake, and this scares him. Soo-hyuk quickly and easily passed his opponent, as if he was flush in front of an ordinary person. The Chinese representative was in shock, not understanding how he managed to do this, and before he could turn around, the main character grabbed him by the neck for bad behavior. Soo-hyuk demands a second answer about whose behavior needs correction, and then he let him go, leaving the Chinese man coughing on the floor. He criticizes the discrepancy between Na-so-jung's statements and his actual level. The Chinese man vows to take the second approach seriously, receiving a challenge to try again. Na-so-jung requests permission to change his fists to the sword as his main style. Soo-hyuk allows the opponent to use their preferred weapon. The fight officially enters the serious confrontation phase. The guy assesses his opponent's swordsmanship as being at the initial master level, and initiates a new attack after reassessing his strength. Energy was already blazing, even from under his soles, and so he quickly rushed at his Chinese opponent, taking him completely by surprise. The opponent tried to attack, but the protagonist quickly dodged. Na-so-jung demonstrates the tail-splitting light sword technique, earning recognition from the main character for her skill. Soo-hyuk emphasizes speed as the key advantage of this style, and asserted the practicality of this technique among Taoist martial arts. But still, the guy points out the uselessness of even the best style in the hands of a man with insufficient swordsmanship. The Chinese man was completely furious at the protagonist's words, and he perceives the enemy's actions as mockery, trying to hit him with renewed force. The main character watched the sword's destructive power as it released energy. The boy parried the blow, proving the futility of an attack without a precise hit. And a second later, Soo-hyuk had already shown the Chinese what a clear and precise strike was. The Chinese man flew back a couple of meters, coughing a little and spitting blood out of his mouth. That's how they were already standing on top of each other. Or rather, only Soo-hyuk was standing, and the Chinese man was trying not to fall. Soo-hyuk's irony reached its peak. He gave Na-so-jung an offer to become a great Korean instead of threats. The Chinese analyzed the level of the nameless as a master without entering the chi manifestation. The guy explained his superiority through the difference in understanding of power levels. Na-so-jung acknowledges the validity of Soo-hyuk's reputation, and he accepts this, standing in a respectful stance before the nameless one. But he also gives the protagonist his warning about the impossibility of confronting the Chunmumun Guild alone. An ultimatum is a choice made with an eye on conflict with a powerful organization. Soo-hyuk continues to try to gain an understanding of the seriousness of the warning. The Chinese man immediately indignantly reminded them of the status and influence of their guild, Chunmumun. Soo-hyuk was furious and walked closer, breaking the floor with every step, and he asked again who exactly he should be wary of in their guild. Na-so-jung is shocked and perceives this as a readiness for open conflict, and he falls to his knees from the intense pressure exerted by the protagonist's aura. Gigi confirms that many people would like to preserve their peace and consider it very important not to cross this line. And he also tries not to cross that line when possible, but he stepped menacingly with his foot and turned even more towards the pathetic Chinese. After all, he now decides where that line lies, and they must never cross it. Now he must remember this well, and not forget who the main character is. Sometime later, the Chinese man stood alone in the middle of the Chinese Guild's training center. Leader Chunmumun asks about the results of the negotiations with Nameless. Na-so-jung reports Soo-hyuk's refusal to become the guild's apprentice. The boss asks again if he's really gone, and receives confirmation. The leader declares that assassination is necessary if the recruitment fails. Na-se-jung apologizes, but the leader acknowledges the damage to his clan's reputation. The agent begs for one last chance to correct the situation. He promises to do everything to bring real results. A second plea for forgiveness from the guild leader. The leader agrees, but doubts Na-se-jung's current strength. Therefore, he gave the order to the agent to return to the main branch for further instructions, and he hung up the phone. Now the Chinese man was hitting the ground with force, thanking his lord for saving his life. But in the office, The leader looks down on his subordinate's weakness. He decided to personally intervene in the situation with the nameless one. He gave the servants the order to prepare for an urgent flight to Korea, as ordered by the leader. He also decided to send Nasojang to Magnus for re-education. He confirmed that he needed to arrive in Korea by the following evening. Suddenly, a man in a white suit stood in front of him and attracted his attention. This surprised the guild leader. It was Vladimir, ironically greeting Chung Yuhan after a long separation. The leader hadn't expected to see him here. Chung Yuhan was also greeted by a man with the vile face he saw last year. Vladimir immediately made a new mockery of Chung Yuhan's recent invisibility. The leader expressed his demand to get to the heart of the matter without unnecessary jokes. Vladimir rejects jokes and grins his evil smile. Chung Yuhan immediately asks directly about the purpose of the Russian's visit. Is it a provocation? He coldly declares his intention to kill his opponent, waiting for the Chinese man's reaction. Chung Yuhan sarcastically notes the unusual concentration of interesting events in a single day. His eyes light up with energy. The sharp question about Vladimir's mental state sounded like an accusation. Chung Yuhan demands an explanation for the absurd murder claim. Vladimir counters, calling madness the inevitable companion of a 1,000-year life. The opponent dryly agrees. Madness is a long-standing character trait of Vladimir. Although thoughts of murder arose, an open challenge on guild territory was too much. A second passed, and one of them suddenly rushed towards the other. It was Chung Yuhan, who angrily asked if Vladimir was seeking voluntary death. He was completely furious, and Vladimir liked it very much. He easily repelled Chung Yuhan's attack without even lifting a finger in his red shield. On the contrary, Vladimir only mockingly inquired about the origins of his opponent's madness, who was not even 100 years old. Chung Yuhan didn't get the hint and was shocked. Vladimir revealed his knowledge of Magnus. Universal rank 8 is a nice number, but from his lips came a prophecy about a quick and significant fall in this rating. Chung Yuhan ironically supports this. He also likes the number 8, and the leader digs his feet in, feigning regret about the upcoming changes. The final statement is that soon there will be only 7 of the strongest left in the world, and their energies collided, causing a huge explosion of energy. Change of location. Seoul. A few days after the conflict in China, Dragon Nephilano reports to Suhyuk on the day's results. 3 rank 5 portals, 2 rank 6 portals, 1 rank 8 portal. She anticipates a large profit, especially from the level 8 portal. Suhyuk briefly agrees. Nephilano expects to quickly recoup the billion at the current hunting pace. Suhyuk confirms his optimistic forecast. Focusing on high-ranking portals guarantees quick income. The guy expresses relief. The Dragoness asks about the guild's formation timeline. Suhyuk admits he's temporarily forgotten about it. She shares her studies on guild management and awaits its founding. The guy suggests they move first. Nephilano recalls Suhyuk's meeting today. He had sincerely forgotten about the agreement. Realization. Meeting Yeon and Jang Hyuk. The guy invites the Dragoness to join him. Nephilano's joyful agreement to the invitation to attend the meeting, and so they finally move to the evening. The meeting place. Suhyuk introduces Nephilano as his 22-year-old companion. She jokes that she looks much younger. Becky Young is introduced as a high school graduate. The Dragoness is surprised by her youthful appearance. Jin Chang-hyuk is introduced by the company. Suhyuk clarifies Yeon's departure from the Baekdusan Guild. Yeon reveals the guild's pressure to get closer to Suhyuk. She never lived up to their expectations. The guy said that he was sorry, but the Dragoness was glad that she was leaving, because Suhyuk would create his own guild. The protagonist's friends were shocked by the news of Suhyuk's creation of a guild. He explains the need for a guild due to the inconvenience of working alone. Jang Hyuk and Yeon immediately ask to join the guild, happy that their unemployment is over. Suhyuk warns of modest starting conditions. Young people are prepared for challenges. Jang Hyuk is confident of the guild's rapid growth under Suhyuk's leadership. Suhyuk thanks him for his trust. The scene moved again to the surface of the water. The fish swam beautifully, from the surface of the water to the very depths, a ton of different ones. And suddenly, in the depths of this watery mass, a portal opened. The sudden appearance of a pair of creatures with inhuman legs. They were nostalgic for their return to Earth. These were 2 demons who noted the increased mana density compared to previous visits, although this time they were more likely to crash here. But the red one said that since they had such an opportunity, they could remember the traditions. Before, returning from here empty-handed was bad form, so now they floated up and wondered if they should start harvesting. But the scene suddenly changed to a breaking news broadcast reporting numerous casualties, which resulted from the appearance of an unknown life form in the Shinjuku area of Japan, Authorities assumed it was a demon. The vice president, who had been watching the news the whole time, was shocked to hear that demons were involved in this matter. He realized that if this was true, it was the first time such a thing had happened since they had invaded during the portal impact with the 72 Archons. But in those days, the angels fought them back, and all the legions of demons eventually left the Earth. But why did they attack the Earth again? Suddenly, while he was thinking about it, the telephone in his office rang. He quickly picked up the phone and answered, introducing himself as Oh Shin Woo. But the information he was given over the phone quickly resulted in shock on his face. He said he didn't know if the guy would move from that moment on, but he would try to contact him. And then, exhaling heavily, he hung up the phone. He folded his hands in front of him and thought, after all, this call was a request for help from Japan. And then the scene moved to the very place of the invasion. There was chaos and destruction. Fire all around. One of the people stepped into the action zone. It was Akira, a ninja master from the Universal 8, and after seeing all this horror, he realized that the situation was much more serious than they thought. At that moment, a message from headquarters came onto his transmitter, and he responded that there was communication. He could hear them. He was told that the request for assistance from elite troops had been accepted, and that they would arrive soon. But nothing was known about assistance from other countries. And then Akira realized that they would have to deal with these demons themselves. He said that he would attack first, and then wait for the advance of the elite troops. And as soon as headquarters accepted his plan, he rushed from the spot. At that moment, the scene changed. To the center of the invasion, someone was looking at the corpses of people around and laughing, because he found it very funny. These were those same two demons. They walked and laughed, saying that the flesh of people with the system was several times tastier than that of others. Suddenly, the blue one stopped laughing and turned his attention to something else. They both looked up to see a ninja rushing towards them, already drawing his katana and preparing to cut off their heads. And Akira wasn't alone. Several more members of his ninja squad were behind him. All of them had to attack the demons at the same time. But the demonic being only let out a cry of triumph, noticing that the prey was walking straight into his hands. The monster expressed his delight at what was happening, his laughter reflecting the growing excitement of the upcoming fight. The team of hunters received orders to immediately destroy the demons that appeared, preparing for battle, and they immediately attacked them from different sides, inflicting many cutting blows. A second later, the first drops of blood began to drip onto the ground, and the ninja stood around the completely cut-up demons, thinking that this time, the victory would definitely be for humanity. After all, with such wounds, they could hardly continue to fight. Suddenly, the demon's wounds healed and were restored in an instant. Observing the enemy's rapid regeneration, the ninja Akira was surprised to note this ability of the demon. The demon's recovery speed turned out to be incredibly fast, which caused more ridicule from them. The demon sarcastically asked if this was all his opponents were capable of as they prepared for a counterattack, and the next second he released his deadly attack of darkness forward. Akira barely managed to dodge, warning everyone to dodge because there was about to be a demonic explosion. But it was more like a nuclear one. Its power was incredible. Once everything had calmed down, Akira landed on the ground in front of the red demon. The demon proudly displayed his power, mocking the battered state of his opponents. The ninja worried that the demon was strengthening itself by absorbing the powers of the defeated awakened fighters. It became obvious that with each passing minute, the monster was becoming stronger and more dangerous to those around him. Realizing the criticality of the situation, the ninja decided to use extreme measures to win. He remembered the deadly pill with a high risk of death or loss of abilities. Taking the Inpoquan pill provided a double boost to all parameters, at the cost of potentially dire consequences, a 50% chance of death and a 40% chance of losing all abilities. But there was no way out. The system confirmed the activation of the ninja elixir's effect, initiating a process of temporary body enhancement. All stats have been increased by 250% with a time limit of 5 minutes. The demon scornfully declared the futility of any effort by a mere man against him. But he didn't expect that the very next moment, the ninja would appear behind him with terrifying speed. Akira already had a golden whip in his hands and was preparing to use his taijutsu on the demon. With a desperate cry, the ninja used the dragon binding technique, trying to immobilize his opponent. The monster expressed surprise and obvious discomfort from the effect of the restraining technique. The demon, with growing bewilderment, noted the complete loss of the ability to move under the influence of the technology. But the ninja knew what he was doing and had already launched a dozen of his kunai at the demon, which quickly pierced the demon's body, causing bewilderment on his part. Limited by time, the man furiously demanded the demon's death, putting all his rage into the attack. He flew past him, striking with such force and speed that it was as if he had fired a gun at him. The system coldly reminded him that there were only 2 minutes left before the booster pill wore off. The ninja desperately wanted to become stronger so he could defeat the demon before the pill's effect expired. After all, in addition to the red demon, he still had to deal with the blue bastard, who had already almost killed half of his team. Even at the cost of destroying his own body, the man was determined to destroy the threat. He threw a kunai at him, along with some kind of seal. Suddenly, the blue one quickly turned around and noticed the ninja's attack, but even this did not help him to duck from the lightning attack. The hero held the same seal in his hands and was preparing to activate taijutsu again. And now, after the seal was activated, a massive fiery explosion occurred at the demon's sight. But even from such a demon, it did not tear into pieces, but only threw it back. The second demon expressed surprise, suggesting that his partner, the demon Red, might already have been defeated. With his last strength, the ninja made a desperate attempt to finish off his enemy. The fatal moment came at the most inopportune moment. When the pill stopped working, he pierced him with a dagger, and he himself began to cough up blood. Such are the consequences of doubling his abilities. The demon mockingly commented on the pill's expiration date, mocking the human. The knife was now in the demon's hands. The ninja realized with horror that even after piercing the heart, the demon continued to regenerate. The second demon suddenly appeared and demanded that his prey not be touched, entering into an argument with the first. The first demon indignantly declared his right to victory, rejecting the claims of the newcomer. The ninja wondered in despair if this fight had always been unwinnable for the human. The winner coldly stated the final outcome of the battle, leaving no doubt about his superiority. With bitter realization, the ninja accepted the inevitability of his defeat at the decisive moment of the confrontation. With his last breath, the man was reflecting regretfully on the unexpected end of his journey when suddenly something distracted him. At that moment, a plane flew overhead, and a message came into its transmitter that help had arrived from Korea, and the sudden appearance of the Nameless One and his codenamed ally could change the situation dramatically. And here they both are. The main character and his girlfriend in suits jumped to the ground, and now they too walked along the place where the battle had taken place and looked around. Two demons eye the newly arrived hunters with interest, assessing their potential. They note that they arrived in pairs, which makes the situation even more intriguing. Blue says they look quite tasty, but Red imperiously forbids the other demons to look at his prey, claiming them as his own. The protagonist first addresses Nefelano, but then remembers that she should be called Code Zero, and gives her the order to keep an eye on these guys. The girl confirms the order. And then the main character turned to Akira, trying to confirm her identity. The wounded ninja tries to confirm, but a coughing fit interrupts her words. She calmly notes the Nameless One's tardiness in this situation, but suddenly Akira watches in shock at the man's sudden behavior. She asks what he's doing. Why does he need her hand? The boy assesses the ninja's plight, understanding the full horror of her situation. The main character is aware of the high risk of demonic possession and death for Akira in this state, and he understands that he needs to fix it. The girl is in shock again. The man recognizes a chi blast technique he had previously seen on the Huan continent. It's a rather dangerous and deadly technique. This discovery led him to suspect desperate measures by demons to protect this place. He began to uncover the technique. The girl couldn't believe that the attack was so easily neutralized. Soo-hyuk explains his knowledge by studying similar cases in the past. She wonders why demons waste their power on such useless things. Why are they on Earth? The guy finds it impossible to ignore dying people and switches to the threat. After all, they still have to deal with these demons who are arguing about their rights to the prey, and their conflict is escalating. The protagonist suggests distributing the targets, taking the red demon for himself, and Code Zero can take the blue demon for himself. And she readily agrees, determined to crush her enemies. And then the guy says they're finally going to start the action. Let's go! And there was already a fiery aura in his background. And the scene switches to a shot from the battlefield. Then we saw a man fly out of one building at great speed and crash into another. It was the protagonist who had difficulty admitting his opponent's superiority, expecting such power from a demon. Akira's condition raises serious concerns about his fate in this battle. And then the red demon arrived. Red, with a predatory smile, suggests starting a real battle without any restrictions. The protagonist readily accepts the challenge, which is set for a brutal game. Soo-hyuk is pleased with the situation, activating the boost to his combat stats. The system confirms a 5-point increase in strength after applying the boost. And then, the main character flew out of the wreckage at great speed and rushed towards the demon. The guy notes the demon's confidence in close combat by his stable stance. He doesn't even try to dodge. This is alarming. The blue demon faces an unexpected dilemma in the midst of a tense battle. And the protagonist is also prepared for close combat, demonstrating his own confidence. And he struck hard at the standing demon, who was no longer so cool. After all, from such a strong blow, the red bastard flew back 10 meters. Soo-hyuk uses the first form of the Emperor's martial arts skill to attack. The demon is shocked by such power. And then another crushing attack falls on the enemy with maximum striking force. The protagonist's palm was red hot from the seething energy, and he pressed it forcefully into the demon, trying to melt its head. The attack hits its target with incredible precision and devastating effect. The intermediate technique crushes internal organs while leaving the outer shell intact. And then he decides it's time to finish and throws a bunch of different strong punches from different sides. Suddenly, his fist grabs the demon's palm, and this greatly shocks Soo-hyuk. The demon, enraged, shouts threats at his human opponent. He's decided to end this show, and Red parried the main character's blow, counterattacking with a strong blow straight to the chest. And now it was the main character's turn to fly tens of meters away from the powerful blow. But he managed to stay on his feet. The boy bent over from the blow and realized that rapid regeneration allowed the demon to instantly recover and counterattack. The enemy's regeneration speed is estimated to take approximately 10 seconds to fully recover. The guy hopes to neutralize the demon before its regeneration is complete, in order to win. The demon mockingly asks if his opponent has run out of steam in the heat of battle. He announces his intention to personally devour the defeated enemy, and the demonic bastard launched his clawed hand towards the main character. The guy was shocked by such a sudden movement. Soo-hyuk uses a modified version of the Emperor's martial arts skill, the second form. The dragon claw technique transforms into a grasping hand, and as soon as this happened, the main character tried to attack the demonic bastard. The demon begins a mocking remark, but abruptly cuts himself off at the sight of the attack. The guy calmly says that this is only the initial stage of their confrontation, and he hits the demon with such force that half of his body immediately disappears. The red demon shouted an insult at his opponent in rage and flew away. He realizes with horror that both his arms are instantly paralyzed by Soo-hyuk's attack. The enemy's goal becomes clear, to sever all his limbs to completely immobilize him. The demon recognizes the opponent's unique abilities and extensive combat experience. He understands the impossibility of close combat and regenerates, and then he began to analyze the enemy's strange technique. This ability was completely different from any known systemic skills. The main character thought that he should have cut off the demon's wings first, but he just licked his lips. Suddenly, the demon finds his opponent even more attractive to devour. His laughter reflects his growing excitement at the unexpected turn of the battle. The demon unleashed massive beams of demonic energy at the main character, but the main character immediately dodged with lightning speed. Soo-hyuk notices the demon's shift to ranged combat tactics. The guy decides to take advantage of the moment to test his own new martial art, but all the demon's rays were still directed at the main character. Soo-hyuk demonstrates the third form of the Emperor's martial arts skill in battle. The Pawn Dragon's hand strikes the enemy with renewed strength and technique, and it covered the demon, along with his equipment, and the main character managed to repel all these red demonic aura rays. The guy confirms receiving the enemy's attack, and prepares for a counteraction. Now he intends to return the blow with double the power and accuracy. The demon cannot believe what is happening, furiously cursing his opponent. And then there was just an explosion in the sky above the main character's head, and as soon as the smoke cleared, the demon was visible, which was very badly damaged after such a strong explosion. The man once again activates the third form of the Emperor martial arts skill. The Cloud Dragon's hand in a modified version comes down on the enemy, and from the side it was indeed visible. The attack was in the shape of a lightning dragon's head. The demon curses the system and his opponent in a fit of impotent rage. His anger reaches its peak, resulting in an uncontrollable explosion of emotions. The demon's repeated cry reflects a complete loss of composure in combat, and the demon began to break through the protagonist's dragon beam. Soo-hyuk watches in surprise as the demon breaks through the seemingly insurmountable defense, and a moment later, the demon managed to reach and deliver a slashing blow to the main character. Blood gushed from the protagonist's body after such a blow, but that wasn't all. The main character realized that he had to look ahead. The demon grabbed the main character by the throat, and the guy was shocked by yet another quick recovery of his opponent. And while he was in shock from this, The demon's hand on his neck squeezed tighter and tighter, and they soared into the air together. The red demon was very happy because he finally captured a strong man in a tense fight. Soo-hyuk regretfully admits his carelessness at a critical moment in the battle. He hopes his next move will be effective against the powerful demon. The pinpoint strike hits the demon's vital nerve centers with precision. The demon watches his opponent's unusual actions with bewilderment, and while the demon was in shock, the protagonist dealt even more blows to the nerve points, and now the red one just spat out his red liquid. The guy hit the demonic vein and the death point at the same time in the attack. This caused only temporary paralysis, requiring the immediate finishing off of the enemy. Soo-hyuk activates the first form of the Emperor martial arts skill again. Soo-hyuk used a modified piercing palm technique in the decisive attack. The overlapping palms technique unleashed a series of crushing blows on the enemy. Soo-hyuk vowed to continue the attack until the enemy's insides were destroyed. The red demon acknowledged his opponent's incredible persistence with irritation. And after that, there was a huge explosion of energy at the site of the battle. The shockwave of energy covered even the main character, and after everything became quiet, pieces of the red demon's body fell to the ground. The guy still couldn't calm down because he felt something, even through the suit. And looking at the ground, he was shocked. Even pieces of the demon were still trying to regenerate. He thought, what should I do? The enemy just won't give in. What a stubborn idiot. Meanwhile, behind the protagonist stood a female ninja. Akira suddenly used the fire fan ninja technique at a critical moment in the battle, and all the demon fragments were immediately burned away. Soo-hyuk expressed surprise at seeing the ninja fighting instead of recuperating. Akira explained her choice by the need to prevent the demon's revival. Soo-hyuk's attention shifted to more important events elsewhere in the battle. There, the girl Nefalano, or Code Zero, was punching the blue demon with all her might and at great speed. The man noticed the approaching end of the battle in the neighboring area. Akira calmly confirmed Soo-hyuk's observations about the end of the confrontation, and now, in the middle of the battlefield, stood a girl in a white suit, with scuffs on her suit and blood on her fists. It became finally clear that the battle with the demons had come to an end. Following these events, the world became immersed in discussions of the news of the demons' defeat in Japan. Naturally, attention shifted to the exploits of the awakened fighters. The authorities expressed condolences to the families of the fallen civilians and soldiers. Akira addressed the public. Special thanks were given to Nameless and Code Zero for their assistance. The people rejoiced, chanting the names of the heroes who saved humanity from peril. Victory belonged not to individuals or nations, but to all of humanity. This fact became the main outcome of the dramatic events that had taken place. Akira expressed deep gratitude to the Nameless One for saving his homeland. The ninja acknowledged her enormous debt to the hero for his assistance. Soo-hyuk modestly replied that he had acted as anyone in his position would have done. The man then announced his intention to leave the scene of the battle. Akira vowed to repay the help no matter what, and she looked up at the sky, in which one could already hear the helicopter blades spinning, and how a sudden pain pierced the main character's entire body with a spasm. After the fight, a wave of pain washed over Gigi. Nefalano asked if he was okay. His shoulder must be incredibly painful. However, something else was causing the protagonist even more intense suffering. Nefalano asked what it was. He was saddened by the missed opportunity to collect demonic hearts for upgrades. The main character desperately needed these hearts to develop his spellcasting skills. How could he forget about it? The scene shifted to the Korea Awakened Association for important negotiations. Soo-hyuk was given a huge sum of 60 billion won. Vice showed it to him. Confirmation of the funds transfer appeared on the bank terminal. The couple were shocked. This money formed part of the Japanese payments as a token of gratitude to Korea. Nefalano was also to receive 30 billion won for her contribution. The difference in amounts was explained by the different fame of the two heroes. The girl was delighted at the opportunity to repay her debt to the protagonist and help create the guild. Soo-hyuk refused to accept the money, considering the help a selfless act. The man insisted that the ninja use the funds for his training. The vice president suggested that both heroes take specially prepared devices. The guy looked at the phones of unknown purpose that were handed to him with surprise. It turned out that these devices had unusual technical characteristics. The phones contained a special module for global satellite communications around the world. They were prepared in case of possible emergency situations while traveling. The vice president assured the heroes that there were no tracking devices on their phones. Soo-hyuk expressed confidence in the vice president and accepted useful devices. He will immediately begin using it as his primary phone. Meanwhile, Soo-hyuk's father was looking at his phone and took off his glasses to see his phone better. The man double-checked the incredible size of the money transfer he had received. A confirmation of the 60 billion won transfer appeared on the screen. His mother could hardly believe the enormous sum of money she'd received. Soo-hyuk confirmed the amount and announced plans to move to a beautiful new home. The hero's sister was delighted with the unexpected news about the upcoming move. The parents looked with amazement at the luxurious house offered by their son. They didn't believe that they could live in such a house, and the father asked if the main character was sure about this. The father assured the mother that she had made the right choice, and suggested that she take a closer look at the house. Suddenly, his phone vibrated, and the guy couldn't ignore it. He asked who was there, and while he was standing and answering calls, the guy looked at the brick wall. The dragoness reported the discovery of a magician and potions at the specified address for Soo-hyuk. Suddenly, Soo-hyuk felt an urgent need to step away for a while. He asked the parents to inspect the houses themselves and sign the contract. The scene changed. Soo-hyuk and Nephalano checked the navigator to confirm the correct location. The building's architecture struck them both as extremely unusual and strange. It was strange how it had appeared in a place like Korea. Nephalano became curious about why one of the most powerful mages lived in such a secluded place. The protagonist suggested that the mage might have been a social outcast for some reason, and the main character immediately pressed some button. Suddenly, a strange ringtone sounded with a phrase about time and money. The absurd ringtone perplexed both arriving guests. The insistent repetition of the phrase continued to echo in the silence. The electronic system indicated the need to confirm the identity of visitors. The robot required identification to complete the procedure. The verification process has been successfully completed. With the verification of Soo-hyuk's data, the system granted them permission to enter the mysterious building, and Nephalano immediately stepped forward. The interior space turned out to be completely empty and lifeless, when suddenly some kind of mecha robot leg crawled out from behind the door. The electronic guide offered to accompany the guests around the premises, and then he brought it into his research sensor. And as they walked, the unknown magician loudly expressed his admiration for the punctuality of the guests. A magician named Afflecane introduced himself and greeted his visitors. He immediately turned to Nephalano, because he recognized her. But for a second, something confused him. He thought, and looked closely at the girl. The experienced mage immediately discerned the draconic nature of his new apprentice. The Draconian's visit to learn magic came as a surprise to the mage. Afflecane's ability to instantly recognize a person's true nature amazed Soo-hyuk. The mage correctly identified Soo-hyuk as the guardian of the dragonid Nephalano. The main character shook his hand and said they would like to work with him. Afflecane declared his warm welcome to all who were willing to pay for tuition. The tuition cost 10 billion won for a full course in magic. The kids were shocked. The goblin did not consider the amount he asked for excessive for the services of a high-level mage. Afflecane emphasized the rarity and value of his magical teachings. Soo-hyuk was still in shock. The mage confidently promised to teach 20 different spells. The training was to be sequential, step by step. Soo-hyuk saw this investment as developing the guild's future key talent. The young man asked if the training would continue until he mastered the system. Afflecane assured him of his professional approach and adherence to agreements. Soo-hyuk was satisfied with the arrangements regarding Nephalano's training, and the scene shifted to Soo-hyuk's old house. He lay on his bed, relieved that the girl's training was resolved. After moving in, he would need to create a special training room. The cost of one potion at 10 billion was still surprising. According to Afflecane's description, this potion was of the level of a legendary elixir. The potion's unique feature was its direct enhancement of the body's magical power. Its consumption instantly increased the drinker's internal energy. Soo-hyuk decided that the potential benefit far outweighed the cost, and as soon as he drank the potion, his eyes widened with new feelings. After all, his body was now literally glowing with a bright cosmic light throughout the entire room. Soo-hyuk felt a powerful surge of energy inside his body after drinking the potion. The energy passed through all 8 meridians and channels, increasing in strength with each second. Energy literally rushed even through his veins, glowing more and more with each passing second. As expected, an incredible amount of power filled every cell of his body, and as soon as he opened his eyes, filled with energy, the system confirmed his mastery of the body-chi unity technique, called kangi. The guy realized that he had finally reached a realm of harmony in his development. However, this level was not enough to resist strong demons. He needed to reach the next stage of development for future battles. The legendary resonance sphere remained the next goal of his training. This level was considered the pinnacle of martial arts mastery. In his past life, he had never achieved this enlightened state. Now, however, Soo-hyuk believed in the possibility of achieving a previously impossible level. Meanwhile, in another beautiful place, representatives of the guilds discussed the news about the creation of the Nameless Guild. Yo Hyun-suk of the Baekdusan Guild expressed confusion about the purpose of the meeting with Lee Jae-woong. The rank 12 awakened one openly expressed displeasure at being summoned to the meeting. Lee Jae-woon of the Chedong-hae Guild introduced himself and tried to ease the tension. Pak Mugi of the Amugi Guild suggested that they stop arguing and enjoy the food. Lee Jae-woon noted the Nameless One's recent excessive strengthening. The creation of a new guild would inevitably weaken the influence of the three great guilds. Yo Hyun-suk demanded concrete proposals instead of empty talk about the problem. Lee Jae-woon suggested that they first prove their common interests before discussing, and then the cup of drink returned to the table with a bang. Yo Hyun-suk considered the meeting a waste of time and refused to continue negotiations. He abruptly rose to leave the meeting, despite attempts to stop him, and before leaving, the representative of Baekdusan declared that the guild's position would be maintained regardless of the outcome, but the drink still poured into the cups. Lee Jae-woon and Pak Mu-gi continued their discussions, deciding to work together. The two guild leaders formed an unspoken alliance to counter the shared threat. Meanwhile, Soo-hyuk was practicing the most complex technique of moving on the surface of the water. He sucked in water with force. Walking on water was only possible for masters who had reached the sphere of harmony. To surpass the level of one's previous life, continuous training was required. Constant improvement remained the only path to the pinnacle of mastery. Suddenly, a beep-beep sound distracted the protagonist from his harmony. He opened his phone and saw that the news of the upcoming creation of the guild had quickly spread throughout the world. Vice President Oh Shin-woo contacted Soo-hyuk with an urgent matter. He confirmed his willingness to listen to the Awakened Association's concerns. Oh Shin-woo reported an unexpected summons from a renowned master, but first, the vice president needed to hear the protagonist's opinion. He told the MC that Baek Mu-hak had officially requested a duel for the title of the strongest in Korea. The guy was shocked by this news. The fight was supposed to finally determine the country's #1. Soo-hyuk accepted the challenge without hesitation, interested in testing his strength. He asked for details about the time and place of the upcoming duel, and then the scene moved to another luxurious mansion. There were two gray-haired men standing in the office. The subordinate confirmed receipt of the letter from the Chunwei Guild for his master. He said that the Amugi Guild had agreed to cooperate, but Baekdusan had withdrawn from the agreement. The man expressed his intention to replace Baekdusan in the top 3 guilds. This was Baek Mu-hak, a rank 13 awakened from the World 8. He admitted that he had allowed other guilds to operate with impunity for too long. Baek Chaemun assumed that Nameless would accept the challenge because of his character. Baek Mu-hak admitted that his opponent is no ordinary rival, and the subordinate said that the rumors in the clan claimed that Nameless had surpassed Baek Mu-hak himself. Baek Mu-hak reacted with mockery to such bold statements among the clan. Baek Chaemun assured them that such fools no longer remained in their organization. Baek Mu-hak praised his subordinate's loyalty and competence. Baek Chaemun recalled Vladimir's warning not to touch the Nameless One. Baek Mu-hak reacted with anger to the mention of Vladimir's name. He admitted his one defeat, but claimed to have surpassed even the World 8. Yes, he may not be quite as young as they are, but how dare they say such things? But Baek Mu-hak stressed the need to address the threat before it is too late. Baek Chaemun swore to do everything exactly as his master wished. Soon someone knocked on the door, and a young guy burst in on them, ran to Baek Chaemun, and whispered something in his ear. And the subordinate said that confirmation had finally arrived, that the Nameless One had accepted the challenge to a duel. Baek Mu-hak smiled with all his teeth, and he stated that the long-awaited moment to begin action had arrived, and the scene shifted back to the guild leader's room. Someone in the room lost their temper, characterizing their opponent in an extremely negative light. The conversation turned to a discussion of specific plans regarding the Nameless One. A radical proposal was made to eliminate an inconvenient rival. The idea of physical elimination provoked a shocked reaction among those gathered. The natural question arose about who could carry out such a dangerous mission. It turned out that the right person had already completed his seclusion and training, and as soon as the pirate realized what he meant, he was stunned. The name of Baek Mu-hak caused a new wave of amazement among the participants in the conversation. The scene changed. People all over the city were excitedly discussing the upcoming clash of the Titans. The entire nation eagerly awaited the clash between the two strongest Korean elites. The protagonist and vice president's limousine was driving down the road at the time. Yellow explained to the protagonist, the winner of this duel would receive 500 billion won on the spot. Even the losing participant could count on 250 billion. This huge amount made portal hunting seem insignificant in comparison to Soo-hyuk. But in the end, Soo-hyuk declared that the amount didn't matter to him. He was absolutely confident of his impending victory over his opponent. Suddenly, the car braked sharply, and with a screeching sound of tires, finally stopped. The guy immediately looked out of it and went out into the glow of the evening sky. It was the main character, masked again. He emerged from the car in his usual attire. His assistant reported that everything was ready and they could begin moving towards the battlefield. There was an interesting atmosphere in the arena, and looking at it, the main character finally gave his consent. The scene changed. The host announced the beginning of the long-awaited moment for all the viewers. The match between Baek Muhak and Nameless was the most anticipated event. Baek Muhak was introduced as Korea's undisputed #1 in the world group of 8. Nameless was declared a rising newcomer, having reached rank 2 in record time. No one could predict who would emerge victorious in this epic confrontation. The viewer admitted that this battle makes his blood boil with excitement. In the arena, Baek Muhak chuckled that the Nameless one clearly didn't consider him a serious threat. He mocked the cheap mask his opponent wore in the arena. Soo-hyuk retorted that it was not yet time to reveal his true identity. Baek Muhak was skeptical that everything would go according to Yang Soo-hyuk's plan. He calmly replied that they would soon find out the answer to that question. The referee gave the signal to start the match, and the fight officially began. The main character immediately began to move, pushing off the ground so that tore the landscape apart beneath it, and rushed straight towards its opponent. Baek Muhak commented on his opponent's first attack as a brave act. Soo-hyuk responded by asking if his opponent was always so talkative. His punch was already ready, but Baek was also not simple, and had already prepared his hands to block the blow of the gentleman. The force of the impact caused the ground beneath them to crack. The shockwave should also reach the stands, ruining everyone's hair and knocking wigs off the spectators' heads. Now the old warrior opposite the main character was full of energy. His eyes glowed, and he immediately made his move, striking in such a way that shockwaves emanated from his fist, but the hero managed to dodge. The next blow was of the same force, but the hero managed to dodge again. Then the Baek Muhak decided to strike from top to bottom, but the hero managed to jump at the last moment, and then he landed somewhere nearby, noticing that after the impact, there was a hole left on the ground, like from a small meteorite. The guy managed to dodge all the attacks, noticing that it was dangerously close. Baek Muhak asked sarcastically where all the initial bravado had gone. He sarcastically suggested that the opponent was already preparing to flee the battlefield. The man activated his energy attacks and confidently stated that they were just beginning their real fight. The guy immediately noticed them. He had to do something. The attack was very powerful, and the only thing he managed to do was activate the barrier so that the attack wouldn't kill him. She couldn't penetrate the shield, but it was clear how powerful she was. The ground near the shield was destroyed. The guy blocked the blow with defensive chi, but he understood that it wouldn't last long. Baek Muhak shouted, admitting his opponent was better than he expected. He was about to unleash his famous thunder attack. He immediately took off quickly, and already in the air, he suggested that Soo-hyuk try out this technique of his to see if he could withstand it, but the main character immediately jumped up sharply, and the blow did not hit him, but an empty spot on the ground, literally blowing him up. Baek Muhak stood in shock. No one had ever been able to recover from that blow before. The guy noted with irritation that this opponent was using his speed again. He admitted that his opponent was indeed very fast, but that was not all. Soo-hyuk stated that he could easily read all of his enemy's movements. He decided to match his opponent's speed with his own speed. Baek Muhak noted approvingly that the fight was now becoming more interesting. The man promised that this time he would hit his target and struck the approaching protagonist. A moment later, his fist was already a couple of centimeters from Soo-hyuk's face. He wanted to break the mask and his face, but his blow again hit an empty space in which there were only remnants of blue aura. Grandfather's eyes widened at this sight. Baek Muhak expressed complete bewilderment at what had happened in the arena, and at that moment the main character was already at the side, preparing to strike. Soo-hyuk confidently declared that from now on, the enemy would not even touch his sleeve, and he launched his hand forward, activating more and more of his energy. The boy used the Emperor of Martial Arts skill, called Piercing Palm. Baek Muhak screamed in rage after receiving an unexpected blow from his opponent, and there was a huge explosion of blue energy that covered the entire arena and the spectators in the stands. Baek Muhak immediately flew back a couple dozen meters, coughing from the force of the blow directly into his body. Strawberry jam was already dripping everywhere. Blood was flowing from his mouth, and the man admitted that he had been careless at a crucial moment in the fight. He was sure that he had hit the enemy, but it turned out to be just an illusion. Soo-hyuk noted that such a mistake was unforgivable for a fighter of his level. He was surprised that the scaled-down version of the technique caused such damage. Baek Moo-hak stood up and admitted that he had indeed underestimated the skills of his young opponent, but his feet immediately broke through the ground beneath him, and he rushed forward. Now the old master was about to show off a truly serious fighting technique. Its energy spread everywhere and influenced the soul of everyone who found themselves within the battlefield. Soo-hyuk felt her too, and finally realized what she reminded him of. Baek Moo-hak's technique was strikingly similar to the ancient art of Thunderwind. Its origins date back 200 years to events on the Hwan continent. This martial art once belonged to the greatest master of the era. A natural question arose about how Baek Moo-hak could have mastered this technique. The old man immediately sent a wave of aura at him and reminded him that now was not the time for such thoughts. And then he launched a deadly charge of energy along this wave. A second later, the attack was already in front of the protagonist's face, but he was able to dodge it. Then came a second, more powerful attack, and he was not affected by it either. And then he had to jump very high to avoid the third attack and not lose his legs. A mocking remark was made that Soo-hyuk was only thinking about evasion, but the protagonist only thought that the enemy's power really had similarities with the divine art of wind and thunder. However, this was only a superficial resemblance in external features, but the technique was a pale shadow of the wind and thunder demon emperor's legacy. The hero struck the old man with force. Spectators in the stands were surprised to note the equal fight in the arena. Nameless was in no way inferior to the famous Baek Moo-hak in this fight. Approaching for a new attack, Soo-hyuk noted that the enemy was not allowing him to create the necessary distance, so he decided to neutralize the attack itself in order to change the course of the battle. He got into a stance and began twisting chakra out of the air, creating a Rasengan in his hands. The experienced fighter shouted that chaotic movements would not help the newbie. But Soo-hyuk remembered that by clashing strong chi with another strong chi, natural energy can be pushed out. This process creates a special vacuum state between the opponents. This impact will be quite sufficient to break through the opponent's defense, and his attack hit the back flyer's aura quite hard as he was in a panic. The technique was reflected and hit the rose again, giving flicks to every spectator of the fight. The grandfather stood in shock, not understanding where the main character got these powers and knowledge from. Then the old man responded by suggesting trying a completely different approach to combat. Baek Moo-hak decided to demonstrate the true power of his direct lineage. The wind counts technique became the next formidable weapon in his arsenal, and the blow, swirling like a tornado, flew straight towards the main character. Well, Soo-hyuk, without wasting a second, immediately clapped his hands hard on his mouth, thereby creating a shockwave, and he directed it forward, straight into the old man's attack, dispelling it with his aura. The old master was shocked by how the protagonist repelled his technique, the remnants of which still fluttered his hair. He noted with surprise that even this attack was so easily blocked. Soo-hyuk asked if this was really his opponent's strongest technique. Baek Moo-hak ordered him not to get cocky after blocking just a few attacks, and he silently noted that the newcomer had probably expended a lot of energy on defense. This time, Baek Moo-hak was absolutely confident of final victory over his opponent, and so he activated even more energy and rushed forward. Well, his blow again brought about an illusion. The main character was already behind and reminded that the enemy could not even touch his sleeve now. He told him that power is useless without proper application, no matter how large or small it is. Baek Moo-hak watched in amazement as Soo-hyuk maintained his speed. Apparently, he still had plenty of energy, and at that moment, while the old master was thinking, the main character ran up to him and struck him with incredible force, pushing him away so that from afar, it seemed that the old man had turned into a comet. He flew into the wall, and finally the dust cleared, revealing cracks in the wall and Baek Moo-hak's worn clothes. The thought of losing to such a newcomer made the experienced fighter furious. Despite intensive training and solitude, the results did not please him. Spectators began discussing the possibility of Baek Moo-hak's defeat in the fight. The pressure on the fighter was mounting with each passing minute, revealing his age-related weaknesses. He was very irritated by the current situation and his own imperfections. He stood up, shouting his name with growing rage and frustration. The repeated cry reflected a complete loss of self-control at a critical moment. And so, Baek Moo-hak entered his most powerful, most insane, most furious phase. His energy turned yellow and rushed in all directions. One breath from him created a shockwave and destroyed the ground beneath him, and above the arena rose not just dust, but a huge tornado of his yellow, furious energy. He came closer to the main character, and now they just looked into each other's eyes. Finally, the old master stood up and was ready to destroy once and for all the boy who dared to fight him. Soo-hyuk commented on his opponent's transition to full-scale use of force. Bak Muhak vowed to destroy his rival for forcing him to reveal his potential, and then he rushed forward, leaving behind only a shadow. In a second, he covered a distance of several tens of meters and was already a couple of centimeters away from the main character. And without waiting for consent, Bak Muhak dealt a crushing blow with his iron fist. Soo-hyuk immediately noted the increased speed and power of his opponent's attacks, and he almost met his punch with his face, but at the last moment, he managed to put out his hand to defend himself. Well, even so, the old master's blow was so strong that it threw the hero a couple of meters away. But the hero couldn't fully defend himself. His mask already had a huge crack. He looked at her, and I can't understand when the old warrior managed to do this. Well, while he was examining the damage, he didn't notice how he got caught in a huge whirlpool of the old bastard's technology. Bak Muhak said. Now the guy had no room to retreat or maneuver. His aura turned dark. Bak Muhak screamed and demanded the immediate death of his opponent in the arena, and all that dark energy began to swirl around the hero and gradually contract. While inside this technique, the main character began the technique and noticed that this time the fighter was really putting in all his effort. Soo-hyuk decided to respond to his opponent with equal seriousness and strength. The boy activated the Emperor of Martial Arts skill for a decisive blow. The Taiji palm counterattack technique became his next powerful move. The backfly's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He knew what this technology could do to him, and the main character has already finished preparing for it and promised to return all the received energy exactly as it came. Soo-hyuk combined the thunder attack and the wind counts technique into one. The guy was about to return this combined attack back to its owner. He intended to return the enhanced technology to its original form. The old man tried to block this attack, but it got through and still fried him. And the main character continued to purposefully direct his energy. A natural question arose about the true identity of the mysterious fighter. No one expected that Bak Muhak would find himself in such a situation. And then energy pierced the entire body of the experienced fighter. It was as if he had been shot with a shotgun. Spectators watched in amazement as Bak Muhak received a serious blow. He immediately spent all his aura and fell to the ground, spread out like a rag. The counterattack used his own technique against him. The defeated opponent lay motionless on the arena's surface. The protagonist approached him. Bak Muhak looked at him and had a hard time realizing that his own technique had been used against him. His body still lay motionless after the crushing blow. But suddenly the main character noticed something. A system loop was discovered that explained the oddities in Thunderwind's technique. Art was used through a system rather than true martial skill. Now the end of the fight became inevitable for both participants in the duel, and the main character firmly grabbed this loop and completely tore it out of Bak Muhak's body. Nameless's victory over Bak Muhak of the World 8 has been officially announced. The number one in Korea is now Nameless, based on the results of the fight. The internet immediately began discussing how Nameless had bested a member of the World 8 in combat. Viewers debated whether Bak Muhak had actually been inferior in battle. After the end of the match of the century, no one doubted the strength of the Nameless one anymore. The consequences of the battle turned out to be more significant than initially expected. Now they'll have trillions of won to buy everything they need. He was so overjoyed that people started pointing at him. Preparations for the next stage began after a resounding victory. The scene suddenly switched to some restaurant. Inside, the guild leaders were sitting again, drinking tea and eating all sorts of delicious things. A conversation was going on. The pirate stated that the entire original plan had completely fallen apart after the unexpected outcome. His aristocratic interlocutor was immediately perplexed as to how such a situation could have happened. Everyone was discussing the great Bak Muhak's defeat at the hands of a newcomer in the arena. They were furious. The pirate confirmed that what happened was exactly what the audience saw. But Nameless was no longer considered a rookie after this resounding victory. He also said that rumors had spread that Bak Muhak had lost his abilities after the fight, and then the aristocrat was surprised. Was he really talking about the Nameless one's ability to destroy the fighter's systems? But this information could only be verified through personal observation. It was impossible to confirm or deny this data without visual evidence. The best solution would be to avoid confrontation with the Nameless one entirely. The situation was becoming increasingly complex and difficult to analyze. But then, the door suddenly opened. The negotiators immediately froze in surprise upon seeing the guy's hand, as they were afraid of being overheard during such conversations. Baek Muhak's unexpected appearance caused general surprise among those gathered. He explained his visit by the need to discuss important issues together. Those present demanded an explanation for his unexpected visit. His condition aroused certain suspicions among attentive observers. Baek Muhak responded rudely to the attempt to block his path to the assembled group. He simply grabbed the aristocrat by the throat, and squeezing his neck with rage and fervor, he ordered him never to block his path like that again. The boy didn't respond, only pitifully uttered words of apology. His strength remained impressive even after losing his primary abilities. Some time passed, and the table was set again. Now Baek Muhak himself was sitting behind him, pouring himself drinks. He sat at the table and voiced a direct question about the purpose of his visit to the guild leaders today. The Emoji Guild president accurately guessed the intention to eliminate the nameless one. Baek Muhak confirmed the guild leader's insight with his reaction. He assumed that those gathered had already guessed his future plans. A hesitant attempt to find a way to withdraw followed, but the experienced fighter said there was no such right. But Baek Muhak promised to act carefully and not to act recklessly. The plan was to exploit the target's attachment to his family. Both heads turned to him in horror. They realized that Baek was ready to act dirty. At this time, in a large office, the manager, the protagonist's father, ended the working day by announcing the end of the meeting. He thanked all the staff for their hard work throughout the day. The man announced his intention to be the first to leave the workplace. His colleagues tried to persuade him to stay for a drink. They reminded him that they had originally planned to spend time together. He politely declined, citing the need to rest early at home. His colleagues noted that their boss would soon be moving to a beautiful new home. The staff mentioned rumors about the fortune his son had recently earned. The manager responded modestly to compliments from his subordinates. He provided a corporate card to cover the costs of the team dinner. The team warmly thanked their leader for the generous gesture of dinner. They named him the best leader before leaving their job. And he left. Receiving recognition from colleagues thanks to my son was a pleasant feeling. This sensation was indeed quite pleasant for the happy father. Suddenly, he noticed something. The night sky shone with especially bright stars at this evening hour. Moments like these should be shared with your family, but suddenly someone approached him from behind. And this someone now furiously scolded Baek Muhak for being here now. It was Guild President Chungwei, who angrily recognized the humiliation of the situation. The plan to kidnap a simple civilian evoked a deep-seated protest in him. Revealing this plan would make returning to his previous life impossible. He was especially terrified of the possible reaction of the group's chairman, Chungwei. But what difference did it make whether he died at the hands of his grandfather or Baek? The only way out was to complete this task well. And as soon as the aristocrat pulled on his gloves, someone's robotic leg appeared in front of him. The guy looked at the bloody and dirty robot and asked, "Who is this anyway?" Code Zero's unexpected appearance shocked him. The girl angrily condemned the persecution of Soo-hyuk's family without any hesitation. She promised to spare his life at the request of the association's vice president. In return, she was going to make his future life a real torment. At this time, Soo-hyuk's father heard a strange sound and began to doubt its source. Turning around and not noticing anything, he decided that perhaps she had simply misheard in the silence of the night. The scene changed. A young girl, Soo-hyuk's sister, happily said goodbye to her colleagues after a day of work. She only dreamed of returning home soon to rest after her shower. An ominous laugh came from the darkness as she walked down the deserted street. Baek Muhak's ominous voice announced that he had long been expecting her appearance in this place. The girl, frightened, assumed she had encountered a mental patient. The attacker threatened to break all her limbs if she tried to escape. He advised blaming her brother, who went by the name of Nameless, for what was happening. The frightened girl was trying to understand the reason for the attack in the dark alley when suddenly, someone approached her from behind. Soo-hyuk suddenly appeared and ordered his sister to stay behind him. The girl, astonished, asked how his brother had gotten there at just the right moment. The attacker confirmed that Soo-hyuk, as always, had anticipated his movements. The girl recognized the attacker as Baek Muhak from her brother's previous fight. Baek Muhak blamed Soo-hyuk for the complete destruction of his entire fortune. Now he vowed to destroy everything that was dear to Soo-hyuk himself, without exception. In a couple of seconds, the guy analyzed it and realized that his inner strength remained significant, even after the loss of the system. Soo-hyuk activated the third form of Cloud Dragon Arm to counterattack. Baek Muhak watched in surprise as a technique unfamiliar to him was revealed. Soo-hyuk angrily asked how the enemy dared to touch his family, and slapped his hand. And at that very moment, the old, experienced fighter's hand completely clenched, and he began to scream in pain. The main character promised that today, Baekmuhak would experience real hell on Earth, and the scene flew out of this dirty alley, and then it changed abruptly. Someone was already opening their eyes and was recovering from the blow. A red landscape was before him. It was Baekmuhak, who found himself tied to a tree in an unknown situation. He realized with horror that he was in a place unknown to him. And the guy looked at his hostage and realized that he had regained consciousness. And then the former leader of the Korean warriors asked about further plans regarding the captured enemy. Soo-hyuk replied that he was simply going to clean up the mess that had arisen. Baekmuhak, in despair, called his captor crazy with fear. He begged to stop, understanding the seriousness of the situation. Soo-hyuk noticed that the prisoner still did not realize his situation. He coldly informed that Baekmuhak would not leave this place alive. The final phrase sounded like the judge's final verdict. And while the experienced master was being torn apart by dogs, the main character simply turned around and walked away. The system notified me of a level increase after eliminating an enemy. Soo-hyuk noted ironically that kills also count toward the level increase. At this moment, a message from the Awakened Association appeared. The scene shifted there. There were 4 people standing in the room and watching as the aristocrat simply hummed and did not give out information. The boy begged for death, preferring it to continued torment. And then the vice president asked what exactly Nefalano's agents had done with the captured enemy. They explained to her that they had caused her enough pain to make her wish for death. But the person who entered the room said that the incident with the kidnapping of civilians was finally resolved. The pirate condemned the very fact of the kidnapping at such a time. President Park Moo-gi received a commendation for minimizing possible damage. The pirate said that before he died, he would only think about the survival of his guild at any cost. The aristocrat immediately called the man standing before him a traitor. The pirate was on the protagonist's side. And yet, the vice president inquired about the current location of the missing Baekmuhak. They were told that Soo-hyuk was personally handling the matter at the time. They asked for clemency, but were unaware of the outcome of the negotiations. Apologies were made for the possible consequences of this difficult situation. Everyone turned to look at the voice. And then everyone knew that Baekmuhak would never return. The protagonist returned to base. Everyone looked at him with open faces, and it was unclear whether it was because he returned so quickly or because he killed Baekmuhak. Soo-hyuk learned of his mother's rescue from President Park Moo-gi personally. Park Moo-gi confirmed that he personally escorted his mother home safely. Soo-hyuk also walked up to his dragon girl and placed his hand on her shoulder. He also thanked Nefalano for helping protect his family. He also expressed gratitude for saving his father in that situation. Nefalano replied that protecting Soo-hyuk's family was natural for her. Soo-hyuk promised to treat her to something delicious next time. The vice president was then instructed to deal with the incident. Soo-hyuk was asked to go inside and get some rest after the fight. So he did. Suddenly, the vice president called out to Soo-hyuk to wait just a minute. They almost forgot to tell him one important thing at that moment. The association finally handed Soo-hyuk the promised ring, asking him to accept it. And the main character quickly took the box in his hands, trying to open it and look at the contents. And the beauty of the ring immediately almost blinded Soo-hyuk. It was so beautiful and shiny. Vice immediately explained the reason for the delay. The ring had only just been delivered. And while Soo-hyuk was putting on the ring, the guy told him that, like the past, this also works through geometry, and the hyper armor is summoned through a spatial pocket. But Vice also forgot to say something, and started a story concerning their agent named Nefalano. It became known that other countries had noticed the dragon, which surprised the protagonist. There was a disturbing speculation that the dragon's true nature had already been revealed. Vice reported that Code Zero's identity had been exposed, but it was not considered a critical issue. Soo-hyuk said that it was okay. Nefalano could handle everything herself. She was smart. But still, just in case, the man asked the association to keep an eye on the agent. Vice accepted this request. The scene immediately switched to a busy city street. People were scurrying here and there, all busy, with bags, in suits, all in a hurry to get somewhere. The guy stood there uncomfortably, as Hongdae was, as usual, packed. Perhaps it was because it was a weekend. When he arrived, the boy didn't find the man he was expecting. He couldn't sense Nefalano's aura, even though he'd promised to treat him to lunch. Suddenly, he received a new message on his phone, some kind of SMS. The main character asked where exactly Nefalano was now. It turned out the dragon had boarded the wrong train and would be about an hour late. The guy couldn't understand how someone could be so confused about the route and ride the metro with so much money. And sitting down on the nearest bench, Soo wondered what he should do during this time. He looked at the people around him and saw that many of them were happy now, and smiling, I realized that now was a good time to reflect. Reflecting back, Soo-hyuk noted how the portal incident after the army had changed his life. Perhaps he would have been as happy as these couples around him. Following this, Soo-hyuk mentioned that his current life wasn't all that bad either. Suddenly, he heard someone nearby repeating his name, and looking to the side, he saw a crowd of vaguely familiar people looking at him with their mouths open, because they recognized him. They asked if the guy had finally been discharged from the hospital. The guy vaguely recognized them. The girl approached and shook Soo-hyuk's shoulders, inquiring about his condition. She recalled that a year ago, when they visited the boy, he was still in a coma. The young man hastened to assure his friends that his health was now perfectly fine. He added that modern medical technology was performing true miracles. The girl immediately told him that the guy had caught them during their regular annual alumni reunion. The guy was surprised. He was reminded that they had all once been the most popular in their year, and now they were starting to gather again, like in the old days. Suddenly, one of the graduates turned to Sanjay, who was standing there seemingly unconcerned. And then the guy asked him, "Didn't Soo-hyuk and Jimin have a romantic relationship before?" And as soon as the conversation turned to past romantic stories within their former company, these two lovers became embarrassed. Another half-bald man quickly joked that all the old stories were long gone. He emphasized that since they had met by chance, it was worth taking advantage of it. The guy then invited his old acquaintance to lunch, which clearly embarrassed him. The protagonist noted that their mutual acquaintance, Shin In-chul, was still just as tactless. But the offer sounded tempting, to make up for all the lost time at the same table. The initiator of the meeting even promised to pay for all the food to persuade Soo-hyuk to agree. However, Soo-hyuk politely but firmly declined, citing an already scheduled meeting. Then Sin's insistent offer changed to a more modest one, to at least come in for a cup of coffee. A girl suddenly joined the conversation, happily greeting the guy. She suggested a compromise. They wait together until his date arrived. This insistence only elicited a heavy sigh and a feeling of frustration from Soo-hyuk. Caving to the pressure, Soo-hyuk agreed to spend just half an hour with the old company. The order at the coffee shop was finally ready, allowing the friends to start talking. The conversation soon turned to the painful topic of events within that very portal. It was noted that Shin In-chul, who had recently awakened, was successful as a healer. Park Sang-jae and Kim Byung-woo also excelled in government service and at a major company. One became a 7th-ranking official, the other at a major corporation. It was noted that Park Ji-yeon and Yoo Ji-min also found very good positions. The guy focused his attention on the last one. She was laughing at the table, and the main character only remembered how she, being his girlfriend at the time, cheated on him while he was serving in the army. Even after some time, thoughts about that story still caused him strong emotions. Soo-hyuk was already regretting agreeing to stay, and his whole demeanor indicated a desire to leave. The girls at the table began admiring how one of their friends was succeeding in life. They noted that Im-chul had always been talented, but now he had reached a whole new level. The hero himself modestly agreed that he really does have abilities in many areas. And then the conversation smoothly turned to Soo-hyuk, with the half-bald man asking about his current activities. The guy replied that he was taking his time looking for a suitable job. This statement immediately elicited a condescending grin from one of his comrades. He immediately offered to help him find a job through his connections. Soo-hyuk made a caustic remark about how his superiority complex hadn't gone away. Shin In-chul decided to change the subject by asking if the others had heard the latest news. Rumor has it that the famous Nameless One is about to found his own guild. This news caused general astonishment and heated discussion at the table, and the main character himself looked at him in shock. Where did this clown hear this? And then Im-chul started bragging that he was applying there too. After all, such a healer would be snatched up in no time. Nameless himself was not delighted with such a fool, and would definitely not have taken him. Suddenly, a familiar voice from behind them interrupted their conversation. Someone greeted Soo-hyuk. It was Nefalano, who apologized profusely for being so late. For some reason, everyone was shocked and asked, who was this person in front of them? The girls were also amazed, because such pure beauty is not often seen. Then Soo-hyuk explained that this was the acquaintance he had arranged to meet. He said goodbye to everyone and said it was nice to see them. Soo-hyuk finally grabbed his jacket and got dressed, while Nefalano asked if they were the protagonist's friends. The protagonist replied that they were his classmates. His classmates were shocked. Young Soo-hyuk was still the same handsome guy, and the same kind of people hung around him. Ugly Im-chul grumbled that there was no point in this beauty. A man should have abilities and be rich. But before he could finish speaking, the building's glass cracked, and suddenly, This whole feast was interrupted by a huge, powerful explosion that knocked out the wall of the building and crumbled it. And then everyone started screaming and running away, realizing that it was time to escape from danger, and people immediately began to run away from the newly formed huge rift behind them. The protagonist's eyes immediately widened in surprise at the situation. He was shocked that this gate had formed right here and right now, an extremely suspicious coincidence. A monster's paw immediately appeared from the suddenly opened portal. The people around stared in horror at the creature emerging from the rift. It was a mutated scorpion whose forelimbs had been transformed into huge, sharp blades. Riots, destruction, and fires began throughout the city, and cries of horror were heard everywhere. Standing among the crowd, Imchul panicked and wondered why the portal had appeared here. Suddenly he turned around, as someone called out to him in a loud voice. Jimin lay on the ground and desperately called for help, screaming that she had injured her leg. She was unable to rise and required support from the one whose ability as a healer obliged him to help. Her pleas became more insistent and desperate as the monster got closer to her. The girl screamed for help to get up quickly, but the monster was already swinging its deadly blade. A comrade who happened to be nearby was horrified and wondered what he should do in such a situation. He looked at the giant monster again and realized that he definitely couldn't handle it alone. In the end, he ran away with a cry, and a cowardly cry, deciding to run for his own salvation. The girl screamed after him in panic, not believing that he was leaving her. Realizing that no one was going to save her, she loudly cursed him with her last words, while the bastard continued to run away. And the monster was already very close, hanging over the girl and raising its blades to strike. Yu Jimin burst into tears of horror from hopelessness and the realization of her imminent death. But suddenly, a gap appeared in the monster's body, through which the girl became visible. The monster screamed in unbearable pain, and then he fell dead on his back. The girl lying on the ground couldn't understand what was happening. She just turned around and saw someone's mechanical legs standing next to her. The sudden appearance of Nameless left the girl completely confused and shocked. The guy asked the victim if everything was okay. He stated that the girl had an obvious leg injury, and she confirmed that she could not walk. Soo-hyuk reluctantly admitted, to himself, that he hadn't wanted to get involved in this situation at all. However, now, it seemed, he simply had no choice. The guy picked her up and promised to take her to a safe place, taking control of the situation. The scene immediately switched to the cowardly bastard who was already hiding somewhere and trying to catch his breath. Coming to his senses, he breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that he had been on the verge of death. However, he did not take into account the fact that another identical scorpion monster was already sitting in his hiding place. A parked car. Imchul was shocked that the creatures caught up with him so quickly. The monster was very close, its mouth open and spraying saliva right into the guy's face. But suddenly, the monster's jaw broke from a quick and sharp blow. The impact was so powerful that the monster instantly flew back a couple dozen meters, leaving behind a huge furrow in the asphalt. It was the protagonist again. Even his mech suit steamed from the impact. Approaching the rescued man, he asked if he was injured. Imchul, having come to his senses, quickly thanked him for saving him. Then Soo-hyuk warned him about the dangers of this place and pointed him in the direction of the association. He also advised him to change his pants. Imchul backed away, despairingly cursing fate for ruining his clothes. The protagonist noted that today truly was a day of surprises. Suddenly, someone abruptly called him directly on the suit, slightly frightening the hero. Soo-hyuk contacted Nefilano, asking if she had found the main portal. The agent confirmed that she had indeed discovered the fault location. The boy asked for the exact location. Nefilano replied that she would send a video feed with the coordinates. The data received pointed to a point approximately 3 kilometers to the west. Soo-hyuk realized that he had initially been looking for a threat in completely the wrong place. The size of the discovered portal indicated a rather large dimension. Nefilano clarified that the dimension inside was no smaller than a small island. She asked if she needed to contact the vice president to arrange entry. Soo-hyuk suggested a simpler plan: evacuate the civilians first. The agent confirmed she understood the task, and the protagonist headed straight for the portal. The portal was already sparkling with energy, and then Soo-hyuk came up and stopped right in front of him. There was a brief remark that the situation was developing as expected. The portal was simply enormous compared to the already substantial armored protagonist. The energy flow within was far more complex than in a human body. An important announcement was made about the presence of a so-called node at the portal. This observation led to the conclusion that the portal was just a door, and this meant that it was not something absolutely invulnerable to destruction. Soo-hyuk began to recite the name of the Emperor's Art's fifth form technique. The final word in the name of this power was the sword that cleaveth the heavens. He raised his sword and said that the heavens would be cut right now. He swung and struck, cutting through the portal structure right in front of him. The guy stated with satisfaction that the chosen tactics were working, but suddenly, his eyes widened in surprise at the resistance. Space put up a last, desperate resistance to destruction, but Soo-hyuk decided to end it and grabbed the sword tighter. For the final blow, he used a modified version of Form 5. The power of his attack increased tenfold, turning into 10 slashing swords at once. The result left the observers in a state of complete shock. The portal disappeared within a second. Only the Nameless One was capable of such an incredible feat as deleting the portal itself. For this, his karma increased significantly, and the system's recording level was upgraded. Soo-hyuk received the title of High-Rank Destroyer and instantly leveled up. Increasing his recording level automatically increased his access level. The system informed him that he could now request a little more information. The scale of the destruction that had occurred was truly colossal. Nefelano expressed admiration for how Soo-hyuk destroyed the entire portal. However, the cost of rebuilding the city was expected to be astronomical. Gigi joked that the vice president would be furious again over such expenses. At this rate, the guy was in danger of dying from overwork, and everyone had to get down to business. At the end, Nefelano asked a direct question. Is Soo-hyuk finally starting his own guild? The guy confirmed that real work on the guild will begin next week. The scene changed. The meeting was filled with outrage at the Interdimensional Alliance's refusal to support Earth in its crisis. The Hongdae portal incident served as grim evidence of impending global chaos. But there's nothing to be done. There are dimensions with far more pressing problems than Earth. The speaker's name appeared on the screen. President of the Awakened Association, Yoo In-suk. The problems were blamed on the numerical superiority of demons over angels and the busyness of the higher races. The vice president made a bleak prediction about the growing number of threats that humanity cannot resolve. But Yoo In-suk urged against panic, as it was pointless. He noted that people had coped quite well over the past 6 years. Words about the uselessness of people in the eyes of the higher races caused open irritation in Vice. His interlocutor dryly agreed that there was a grain of unpleasant truth in this assessment. Suddenly, the name of that mysterious fighter, Nameless, came up in conversation. A specific proposal was made to introduce Soo-hyuk to representatives of other dimensions. According to Yoo In-suk's opinion, this guy could overcome the limitations imposed by the higher races. Vice asked if the point of the plan was to demonstrate one's own strength and ability to help others, and Yoo In-suk confirmed his thought. The very idea of bringing in Soo-hyuk in his current state was met with approval by the vice president. The conversation, however, contained not only alarming, but also encouraging news. It turned out that there was one dimension ready to provide Earth with its support. This information was mildly surprising in its quantity. Just one. The elven state of Elvenheim promised to support Earth. The first step in this plan was supposed to be a convincing conversation with Bezimiani. The vice president accepted the order for execution without further questions or discussion. The conversation then brought up a key concept, the ceasefire line. This refers to the demilitarized zone that remains on the Korean peninsula 80 years later. But after the portal struck, the northern part of the peninsula ceased to be human territory. The life of the people there was little different from the fate of livestock. A powerful, non-human race ruled the entire Earth undividedly. This race was the so-called Grey Elves, who established their own cruel order. Their next need was a new batch of human slaves. Monsters were unsuitable for this role due to their sheer stupidity. Humans, however, were intelligent, timid, and obedient enough to be ideal slaves. However, over time, human resources in the captured lands began to dry up. The time has come to replenish the depleted supply of living labor. The question arose about the direction of the new hunt. To the south or further north? One of the elven aliens became wary when he heard a strange sound in the immediate vicinity. He turned around and saw a red gate just a couple of meters away from him, and suddenly, some kind of tail emerged from them and rushed forward, and he grabbed the elf by the neck, squeezing tightly. That's how strong they are, these cowardly elves. The new guests entered through the portal and rejoiced at their safe arrival on Earth. Their shoes thudded loudly on the floor. The demon girl declared that she was carrying out a task given to her master, and asked the elf who he was. The appearance of the demon caused genuine horror and amazement in the gray elf. The demon demanded an immediate answer, threatening to wring his neck otherwise. The frightened elf shouted his name, introducing himself as Argon. The stranger recognized the elf by his nickname, the king of Elven Fall, and his infamous reputation. She reminded Argon of his oath of allegiance to another demon lord named Ladrida. The demon mockingly noted that serving the third lord of Basago was a great honor. After these words, the demon's tone softened, and she lamented the late confession. She should have told the elf this right away. The elf still dared to ask about the purpose of such a powerful demon's visit. The demoness finally introduced herself as Commander Labam, one of Lord Paymon's military leaders. She held a high position, commanding 38 legions in the Great Army. Labam asked the eldest of the Grey Elves a key question about the possibility of changing patrons. The demon asked directly whether the elves could serve Lord Paimon as faithfully. Argon immediately assured that he and all the Grey Elves were ready to swear an eternal oath of fealty. He vowed to follow Lord Paimon, the Lord of Destruction, forever. Afterwards, Labam asked about the fate of two demons who had recently disappeared from this world. She dismissed the possibility of their deaths in a world with such a low threat level. The demon inquired as to where those offspring wandering between worlds could have gone. The elf suspected they might have traveled to some other reality. Labam said that was nonsense, because it wasn't about children wandering around without her lord's knowledge. Argon, in a panic, began to swear he knew nothing about the demon's disappearance. Labam frowned. Despite all the questions, the demon noted that the sensations of this world had changed greatly. There are some rather appetizing specimens here. Argon turned around and admitted that he couldn't see anything like that. Labam noted that the earth had changed and was now home to many delicious-looking creatures. Demon suggested that Argon go in search of traces of the two missing offspring. She asked directly if the elf would like to go north with her. According to the demon, she sensed many things in the northern lands that looked delicious. Argon agreed, deciding to use this opportunity to simply follow the powerful demon. He announced that he would take advantage of this opportunity and follow his new patron. And then the evil demoness Labam laughed and said that they would finally begin the merry festival of destruction. The scene of the events was shown in the city of Beijing in China, where the action has moved. A busy city square. The same shoes landed on the roof of one of the buildings. The demon noted with satisfaction that this place was indeed full of people. A smile lit up her face. She raised her hand, and a dark demonic aura immediately emerged from it. The asphalt immediately began to crack, and the cracks began to spread quickly across all the main streets of the city, and mass destruction began. People immediately began to run away in fear as pieces of the road flew through the air. Huge cracks formed in the middle of the road, into which cars and people fell, and completely different creatures were crawling out. Small, red-eyed devils. And quickly this entire team of demons ran towards the gaping people, and the demon immediately proclaimed the beginning of a joyous festival dedicated to pure destruction. With these words, she officially launched the horrific celebration. The scene suddenly changed to Suyuk's arrival at the lab. He was met from the elevator by Vice and Dwarf, who urgently called the protagonist inside. The scientist urged the boy to hurry in and don the hyper armor. Suyuk asked what was going on, confused. They told him that there was no time for explanations now, but the matter was worthwhile, so there was nothing to worry about. Suyuk almost agreed, or so it seemed to the scientist, and immediately activated the armor. Immediately, a green liquid with bubbles began to flow through the pipes. The protagonist was already inside the suit, and the tubes with liquid were connected directly to him. He asked what it was. The system reported the completion of user recognition for the exclusive nameless Hyper Armor module. The process of installing additional parts and updating began, which surprised the guy. The Hyper Armor system upgrade process has been successfully completed. The new feature allowed Suhyuk to use high-speed flight. His eyes lit up. The vice president and scientist apologized for the urgency due to the unexpected nature of the situation. However, they noted that this method of travel is much more convenient and faster than a regular flight. The protagonist emerged from the capsule and noticed that the updated armor gave him a new, unusual feeling. He was promised that Nephalana would be re-equipped immediately upon arrival and sent to the battlefield. After receiving the order, Suhyuk confirmed that he understood the task, to go and beat the demons. After this, the man announced his immediate departure to the scene, and the scene again shifted to complete chaos. Fire engulfed the entire city. On the battlefield, among the opponents were not only demon imps, but also much more serious creatures. The people around united and created their own militia against the demons. The soldiers clashed with the knights, which made the situation much more difficult. A desperate command was given to stop the enemy at any cost. The sounds of battle and shouts mingled into a deafening roar. The battlefield was filled with blood, and it was no longer clear whether it was human or demonic. At this time, the demon was hanging in the air and giggling. She watched the people's resistance with mockery, finding it amusing. And getting bored, she suggested that I also take part in this entertainment a little. People immediately took notice of the new unit in their battle. One of the defenders shouted that the target of the attack should be exactly that one. He pointed to the demon who was clearly the leader of the entire invasion, and they all looked in that direction. The order was given to concentrate all fire on this particular target, and everyone rushed at it at once. Despite the strength, there was only one enemy, which gave hope. The presence of rank 12 awakened ones gave the defenders a fair chance, but suddenly they tensed up. After all, a fast and deadly attack was already flying in their direction, cutting through everyone and everything in its path. An entire wave of people was mowed down in a second, and now around her lay a pile of corpses of ordinary people who simply wanted to survive. In response to all the people's efforts, the demon merely asked dismissively if that was all. The demon found the proceedings too bland, and she declared she had had enough fun. She gave the final order to completely wipe all humans from the face of the earth. The scene shifted again to the Shanghai branch of the Heavenly Gate host. The soldiers shouted in panic that the sky and sea were completely blocked, which cut off all escape routes. This was said by the Chinese president, Yu Jiaho. Mutual accusations began at headquarters about who suggested going to Shanghai. One of those present tried to reproach the chairman, reminding him that he himself wanted to go there. The grim conclusion was that there was nowhere left to run, and they simply followed the others. Someone asked in despair what they should do now in this hopeless situation. The chairman suddenly had an angry question about where the promised support from the elves was, who were still nowhere to be seen. The secretary reported that the defense forces are doing everything possible to save civilians. The chairman sharply condemned the futility of saving a handful of civilians when the fate of the country was being decided. He thought that everything would be fine if Zheng Yuhan were here. A man suddenly appeared and asked with disdain why everyone was hiding here like frightened mice. The stranger again demanded to know what they were doing hiding in the shelter. His appearance caused a shock, and the chairman, astonished, recognized him as Zheng Yuhan. Yu Jiaho furiously accused him of hiding all this time. He then made a direct threat to the stranger, who asked if he wanted to die. Zheng Yuhan countered the question by asking if they really wanted to know if he wanted to die. The warrior was indignant and declared that such words were inappropriate from someone who was hiding to save his own skin. Zheng Yuhan introduced himself loudly, shouting his name to everyone present, and struck his iron fist into his chest. He added that he may not be righteous, but he is certainly not a coward like them. The man declared his intention to go to the battlefield, even if it cost him his life. His hands were iron, and his heart was a reactor. His appearance in this form and his words caused a stormy and shocked reaction among those present. Even in the face of death, Zheng Yuhan intended to maintain the pride of fighting to the end. The scene shifted to a crowd running through the city. Someone reported that Beijing fell almost instantly under enemy pressure. Opposite the demons stood another group of militiamen. The prognosis for Shanghai's fate sounded just as hopeless and bleak. Suddenly, Zheng Yuhan appeared on the field, and an imperious question rang out. Was he really teaching everyone gathered like that? Recognizing the voice, someone exclaimed in amazement, addressing him as, "Teacher." The general astonishment escalated to the question of whether this man was truly still alive. Zheng Yuhan turned to all the people and announced that from now on, this place would be under his complete control. He asked everyone if there were any fools willing to sit idly by while the enemy was in the house. Everyone shouted no. His final line was a reminder that there was nowhere left to retreat. He extended his sword forward, and even the reactor in his heart glowed bright. Then Zheng Yuhan turned to all his troops and gave the order. Everyone attack! The scene suddenly switched to an overhead view of a crowd of people fighting against huge crowds and waves of monsters. Among the crowd of monsters was Zheng Yuhan, who swung his sword and chopped down all the monsters around him. A man in a cloak watched this massacre and said that all these brave fools were only hastening their death. It was the same cyborg who, with cold indifference, declared that he didn't care since he had already received his payment. He noted the enormous value of the data on the battle between demons and martial artists. The thought was expressed that any information inevitably turns into power over time. A lens emerged from his eye. Zheng Yuan continued to fight with special will and strength, screaming as he almost reached the limit of human capabilities. He then activated a powerful attack and with one blow released a beam that immediately cut the crowd of monsters into two parts. The demons looked very exhausted. They did not expect to encounter such a strong rebuff from a human. With the sect master's arrival on the battlefield, the situation changed, and the battle began to look promising. The spirit of the entire militia rose dramatically. The demon girl, watching the fight, noted with interest that what was happening was becoming more and more interesting. She couldn't resist the temptation to join the unfolding carnage and rushed down. Immediately, the demoncia burst into the center of the group of people and immediately scattered several warriors around. The guys immediately flew back a couple of meters, but quickly came to their senses and decided to see what it was. A powerful demon lustfully approached the strong man. Finding him attractive, Chang Yuhan looked ahead and saw the hero of the occasion. His jaw clenched. The enraged man screamed at the demon in rage, calling her a creature, and rushed forward. The demoness didn't even move, and the smile didn't disappear from her face for a second. The man, in anger, promised the demon to tear off all of his limbs one by one and activated his technique. But demoncia easily dodged his first attack, almost losing her nose. She also deviated from the second, asking a skeptical question about the effectiveness of the attack. The demon admitted with disappointment that her opponent didn't seem all that special. Chang Yuhan cursed in despair, unable to understand the reason for his failure. The warrior couldn't believe that even he was incapable of wounding this demon. The demoness immediately stated that the battle had not yet reached its logical conclusion. The demon, with cheerful cruelty, suggested they finally start playing and fighting for real. She immediately launched her tail at the warrior. Her eyes narrowed, and that predatory look was already visible. But the guy quickly stopped her attack, cutting her tail into pieces in a second. Running through them, the man only ordered the demoness to shut up, not hiding his contempt and anger. He immediately decided to attack forward with his sword, putting a lot of strength into this blow. But the demon girl easily stopped his attack by simply grabbing his sword. Chan was shocked, and demoncia admitted in a drawn-out, bored voice that she found the whole spectacle incredibly dull. However, the demoness had to admit the strength of her opponent. He was probably the strongest person she had ever fought. And then she attacked the man. Chang Yuhan made a hoarse sound. Her tail pierced the man's chest, and the demon was already thinking about how best to feast on her prey, tasting his blood. The slain warrior despaired, contemplating the senselessness of his imminent death. But he remembered that he was a great warrior, Chang Yuan himself decided that he would drag this demon to the grave with him at any cost. But the girl did not allow him to do this. She immediately finished him off, cutting him with her tail. The master's disciples screamed in horror, not believing that even Chang Yuhan had been defeated. The cyborg was also in shock. It seemed like all the cameras would fall out of his eyes. He grimly confirmed that such power was to be expected from a high-ranking demon. The demoness had tasted the warrior's blood, and now stood and savored it, inhaling the wonderful aroma of death. She immediately screamed and announced the release of the 5th stage seal, which released a monstrous power. The demon began to laugh, loudly and heartbreakingly, addressing his immediate master. The beginning of a bloody festival in the name of their master, Lord Paimon, was proclaimed. Immediately, someone in black armor stepped onto the battlefield, shaking the ashes on the ground. It was a huge demon in black armor with red eyes. It was the demon Rithor. Then a fat green goblin demon appeared on a chariot with dead horses. It was the demon Kehasa. The demon girl immediately called for the entire land to be cleansed and presented as a gift to her lord. And 2 powerful demons immediately headed towards the crowd of people who stood in shock, having just lost their leader. They trembled with fear, not understanding how they could fight and win without their master. Someone's voice urged everyone not to retreat, but to continue fighting fiercely to the end. The boys turned around in shock. There they saw a girl casting magic forward, who added that even if they broke their swords here, they were still doomed to die. A jubilant cry rang out that the long-awaited elven reinforcements had finally arrived. The goblin demon looked at this and only replied with glee that the elves had come to their own certain death. One of the elves, calmly and with dignity, asked if this was really true. Immediately behind them came the loud clatter of horses. It turned out to be a mounted detachment of elven warriors. Now that was real reinforcement. They immediately headed towards the wall of demons. Some were throwing spears and some were shooting from bows. The rest of the elves dismounted and were already fighting the demons with swords. The demoness watched this as if it were a huge anthill or a battle of caterpillars. The demon noted with mockery that even the elves had joined this mad feast. The same demon thoughtfully said that it was probably time for him to call in additional forces. Suddenly, a cold order was given to immediately lower the hand raised as a signal. The demon was shocked to realize that someone had approached her completely silently and attacked her. Dodging and stopping, she began to ask who it was. The demon shouted out the question. The hero simply replied that he had come to capture him. The nameless one contemptuously called the demon a despicable bastard, defining his essence. And now they stood opposite each other, the main character in the crater and the demon a little higher. Soo-hyuk, with obvious interest, invited Demon to join him in the game. The demon let out a strange laugh, admitting that the guy seemed like a funny person to him. Finally, the demon gave his consent and allowed the man to try to entertain him. Immediately, the sharp spike of the demon's tail headed towards the main character's chest, but he sharply dodged and was already behind the demon girl. She was not particularly impressed. The demon sarcastically asked if the protagonist thought that an ambush from behind would go unnoticed. She immediately struck him, but it was as if Soo-hyuk had never been there. She missed. The boy announced a change of positions, which caused the demon to react with shock and disapproval. The main character used the shadow clone technique and attacked the girl. The stunned demon fought off the clones in a rage and demanded to know what kind of unusual trick this was. Soo-hyuk doubted that his opponent was even capable of understanding the technical explanation. In response, the demon only exploded with rude curses, rejecting such ridicule towards himself. The demon noted with surprise that the guy had dodged even this. And the main character was already behind and was preparing a new blow, saying that the girl was speaking too rudely. The guy announced the use of the 6th form of the Emperor's art of martial arts, and then he slammed the girl into the ground with all his might, leaving a trail of speed behind him. And then there was an explosion, sending a shockwave across the entire area. After some time, Soo-hyuk was already walking, and smoke was coming from his hand and suit. Soo-hyuk stated that the blow was quite accurate and hard for the opponent. However, the guy added that one such blow is still not enough for victory. The main goal at the moment was simply to gain as much precious time as possible. The real concern was a completely different group of enemies on the battlefield. Their numbers were shockingly large, which greatly complicated the situation. Soo-hyuk called the system, and a status window titled Strength appeared on the screen. A choice appeared. Increase your class and rank? The answer to the question was extremely simple and completely obvious. Yes. The system announced the start of the quest to level up the summoner class. To complete the quest, a full 1 billion experience points were required. The demons rushed at the protagonist. Soo-hyuk wondered how many enemies would need to be destroyed to earn that amount. He immediately clapped his hands, his signature technique, and the entire battlefield was filled with huge shockwaves from the main character's ability. An idea was born in the guy's head to create special vibrations to enhance the attack. The curvature of space could allow the blade to move faster and sharper. A small ripple was supposed to turn into a wave, and then into a whole tsunami of power. The 7th form of the Emperor's martial arts art was used. The technique received a formidable and majestic name, the Wrath of the Sea King. Immediately, all the creatures and monsters sank under the water. That was the nature of the attack. They were defeated. After this, the system notified several times about a significant increase in accumulated experience. One of the spectators admiringly confirmed that only the Nameless One could achieve such a feat. The elf girl looked at them and chuckled. Oh, this Nameless One. The girl also noted that the guy's fighting technique looked strangely familiar to her. The observer began to speculate, but was distracted by the goblin monster's cry about the elf's serenity. The girl immediately decided that this annoying green bastard should be dealt with first. The demon immediately challenged the elf, asking how long he could continue to dodge, and he launched his purple ball at her while the girl stood motionless. But as soon as the attack reached its intended target, the elf seemed to fall through the ground. She again irritably called the demon an annoying bastard who was interfering with the main battle. Reasoning that a large opponent must be slow, the elf decided to use speed, and then she aimed straight at the face of that disgusting fat green pig. But she rushed past, holding a sword in her hands, and cut the demon's carcass into 2 parts. After a series of attacks, the demon mockingly noted that he had only lost his arm. Such an insignificant result did not frighten him at all, and now he released fire from his mouth. The girl immediately noticed this as the light of the flame illuminated her and its heat began to roast her, and she instantly spawned a green spirit clone in front of her, which could become a shield for her. And that's what happened. Their energies collided, and neither wanted to give in. The demon praised the knight's ability to summon spirits, calling it impressive. The elf panicked as he thought about how to kill the demon with one blow, while it laughed at him. The green pig said that she could play with our elf all day long. The demon confidently declared that in the end, it would be the elf who would die, not himself. But another armored monster had already flown into it. Together, they flew a few meters along the ground. The elf then turned around in shock to see where the other monster had come from. At that moment, a calm voice of a girl in a white suit rang out, apologizing for being a little late. Zero began to land just like Iron Man, fire bursting from her hands. At this point, the scene shifted to the main character. The demon laughed strangely again, admitting that he was having a lot of fun fighting the human. She added that he had not met such a worthy and strong opponent in battle for a long time. The demon's gaze fell greedily on the boy's heart, which could help summon Lord Paimon. Soo-hyuk retorted that he also needed a demon's heart, noting their strange compatibility. Such insolence on the part of the man only provoked the demon and earned his sympathy. The demon promised to grind the impudent man into dust and swallow him whole as a warning to others. Suddenly, Gigi's gaze caught on something, and he expressed surprise at the picture that opened up. The protagonist, observing the demon, was amazed at how unbalanced this power turned out to be. As we watched, we could see how the energy storm continued to grow steadily in size. The girls looked at all this in shock and did not understand what was about to happen. Gigi understood that with such a growth rate, he could very well swallow up the entire huge city in the near future. The demon asked sarcastically if his opponent had become cowardly now that he was faced with a real threat face to face. Soo-hyuk realized that the Taiji counterpalm technique would no longer work here, and the demon was triumphant. He approached the main character in the form of a hurricane and said that this was the end for him. The guy concentrated and created a powerful protective barrier of chi around himself, preparing for the strike. But the monster's blow hit the shield hard, leaving cracks on it. The thought of supporting his ally with magic flashed through Zero's mind, but he wasn't sure. He held his defense and shield and said everything was fine. Suddenly, Soo-hyuk had an idea, and he found a potential way to counter this monstrous force. True, he was about to use this technique for the first time, which added considerable risk. He needed a single, devastating blow capable of penetrating even the most powerful demon defense. The method involved the harmonious collision of two powerful chi flows to generate a new force. The process was similar to nuclear fusion, and the guy announced the eighth, final form of Mukwangan. Immediately, energy filled the surrounding area. The technique received a majestic and frightening name, the appearance of the fire dragon. The demon was shocked, not understanding how a human could master the flames from the demonic worlds. Soo-hyuk felt that his internal energy was not yet sufficient for perfect control. Having realized this, he also realized that if he did not do this, he would not be able to win. However, there was no other way out, and with a cry, he threw all his strength into completing the attack, and he released a huge, bloody, fiery dragon forward. And then a huge explosion thundered on the battlefield, and then a crater appeared. The system recognized that the boy had single-handedly created a supreme martial art of incredible power. This achievement was recorded in the Akashic Records as an SSS-ranked art. Relieved, Soo-hyuk received the new title of Grand Master for his creation. The level-up quest required an additional material, a demon heart, to complete. The guy remembered with annoyance that he had again forgotten to take the main trophy after defeating the enemy. In another area, the battle was still going on, and the situation there required attention. The protagonist, in a panic, begged for his precious heart to be returned to him, shouting after his retreating enemy. Soo-hyuk immediately used his second form of Mukwangan to catch up with his fleeing prey. The next move was called Dragon Claw Slash and was incredibly fast. The demon knight was immediately shocked, as there was now a huge hole in his chest from the main character's blow. The protagonist immediately told the demon that his suffering was just beginning, and now they were about to enjoy the feast. He immediately pounced on him and began tearing at the monster's armor, ripping out its heart. And then, having accomplished his goal, he quickly jumped off the demon. Finally, the treasured heart of the powerful demon was in the hands of Soo-hyuk. All the conditions for leveling up have been met, and the system has requested confirmation for the upgrade. The guy chose the yes option without hesitation, agreeing to the immediate development of his abilities. The process of evolution of the profession to the guardian sorcerer began, and his spells became stronger. As a reward, Soo-hyuk was given the opportunity to learn 10 new additional magic spells. And the demons disappeared. The elf finally asked with relief if it was all over, and all the people around began to shout and praise the nameless one, congratulating each other on the victory. The thoughts of the cyborg among the crowd were occupied with how the demon was defeated with just one final blow. He couldn't understand how the human body could withstand and generate such colossal power. The crowd began chanting the name of the hero who had saved the city, the Nameless One. The observer decided that this guy was definitely a pureblood and not an enhanced awakened one, and that it was worth retreating for now to collect data despite the interest. He needed more information before a possible future confrontation with this warrior. The scene changed. It was the next morning. It was sunny and everything was shining. And inside the hotel, everything was shining too. The sun was shining through the windows, sending out rays of sunshine. Soo-hyuk was pleased to note that the luxury rooms were truly exceptionally comfortable. After the battle, for the first time in a long time, he was able to get a proper night's sleep in safety and peace. A knock on the door interrupted his morning peace, and he wondered who could have arrived so early. He was a little irritated by this intrusion, because rest was vitally necessary for him now. He approached and saw Nefelano wearing a mask, and immediately asked why he was wearing it. The guy said he didn't want anyone to see him right now. Soo-hyuk then invited him to stay in his room, but the visitor outside the door said that he missed her and insistently asked to be let inside. She threatened to use spatial displacement magic if the door was not opened. The guy was very surprised when he looked at the camera and didn't see anyone there, and the guest actually materialized right in his room. The girl confirmed that magic works, but only over very short distances. Soo-hyuk was genuinely impressed by such an unusual and advanced magical skill. He noted that even his own art couldn't allow him to move through space in such a manner. His friend asked about his well-being, remembering his condition after yesterday's battle. The guy replied that he was fine now, although his strength had not yet fully recovered. The art he created proved so powerful that it would take time for it to fully recover. Soo-hyuk advised against worrying too much about her condition after the fight. That power really impressed her too, reminding her of the breath of a real ancient dragon. The guy confirmed that the pain in his body still makes itself felt, although it has become easier. The girl expressed hope that he would, if possible, not use this technique again. Soo-hyuk agreed, noting that the physical body does not recover as quickly as energy. It occurred to him that the process of transformation and complete rebirth of the body could change the situation. The guy explained that this phenomenon, in simple terms, is similar to shedding old skin. The discussion revolved around overcoming the body's basic limitations to achieve a new, more powerful form. This led to speculation that he himself might be approaching this legendary state. He decided to immediately check his current strength and stats in the system. Young Soo-hyuk's detailed statistics appeared on the screen. He noticed that his level had increased even more than he had initially expected. An entry about preparation for the body's reincarnation appeared in the system's additional notes. On the Huan continent, this state was considered a legend, beyond human capabilities. It was a necessary condition for completely overcoming the limitations of the mortal body. The protagonist no longer had much time left before the process was completed. The scene changed. The body, having undergone the refining of bones and bone marrow, became the perfect vessel for power. It was transformed into a diamond-like body, invulnerable even to steel and immune to poisons. When asked about poisons, Nefelano replied that he could make them himself if necessary. The guy asked the girl for some poison for his own purposes, which caused her understandable surprise. He declared that he was going to eat it, which left his interlocutor in complete and utter shock. She asked, "Is he completely crazy? Or does he have some kind of fetish?" Soo-hyuk asked them not to speculate and quickly explained his unusual plan. The method involved properly neutralizing the poison to develop a lasting immunity to it. The girl tried to object, but she was not bothered by the absurdity of the idea. But for a completely different reason, she admitted to feeling awkward, which greatly surprised her companion in this situation. The guy sincerely didn't understand what exactly could be so confusing about a simple request about poison. My friend continued to insist that there was a reason, but she didn't dare voice it right away. Soo-hyuk suggested postponing this conversation and moving on to more pressing and important issues. The next step was to check the new titles and their effects received after the battle. The title of Grand Master granted a 20% increase in strength when using his techniques. This significant bonus impressed the young man, especially when combined with his previous titles. He was faced with a difficult choice between increasing his strength and generally increasing all his stats. To make a decision, it was first necessary to carefully study all the effects of upgrading the class. The system reported an increase in the rank of many skills and officially recognized his art. Soo-hyuk was pleased with the results and intended to continue developing in the same direction. The girl noticed his good mood and asked what had happened. The guy was a little embarrassed, but he confirmed that he truly had a reason to rejoice. His friend sincerely said that she was also happy when he was happy, which confused him even more. Soo-hyuk suddenly remembered to ask about the real reason for her visit to his room so early. She answered evasively, citing concern for his rest after yesterday's difficult battle. Then, the girl herself asked about his plans and the timing of his return to Korea. He suggested leaving today or tomorrow, as soon as his condition allowed. He stayed only to recuperate from the injuries he received in battle. He also had a personal reason for returning, a desire to meet a certain elf. The hero immediately heard the doorbell ring again. Suddenly, a new guest appeared in the room. Although no one was supposed to disturb their privacy, Soo-hyuk respectfully greeted the unexpected visitor, whom he called Instructor Shar. A second later, they moved into the living room. The instructor, in turn, expressed sincere joy at this unexpected meeting with the student. The coach noted that yesterday's fight clearly demonstrated his protégé's enormous growth and strength. He responded that he had been training diligently. He said such a level couldn't be achieved through hard work and training alone. Instructor Shar asked if Soo-hyuk had overcome any barriers in his development. The boy replied that there were several such barriers. The mentor acknowledged that this was noticeable, and, as a former teacher, he felt proud. He then suggested sparring. The sudden proposal of a duel left Soo-hyuk genuinely and noticeably surprised. Shar hastened to add that the guy would have to restrain himself, but her serious look was not joking. Despite the surprise, the idea itself ultimately didn't seem so bad to the man. Soo-hyuk noted that this is difficult now due to his incomplete recovery and the need to hide his identity. He suggested postponing the sparring until a more appropriate time, to avoid any unnecessary problems. The instructor had to accept this, and the main character inquired about Serenial's affairs. Since the events in Trinon's dimension, there had been no news from that elf. Shar reported that Riel often thinks about the boy and talks about him a lot. According to the mentor, the elf has great respect for Soo-hyuk as a person. The boy explained to Nefelano that Serenial was Shar's student and they had worked together before. Nefelano said that she understood and turned away. Soo-hyuk noticed his companion's strange and unusual behavior that day. The girl corrected him, introducing herself by her real name, Feli, not Nefeliano. She also warned that another intruder was approaching the room from outside. The man noted with irritation the incredibly large number of visitors so early in the morning. He looked out already wearing the mask of the Nameless and asked, who was there? The new visitor introduced herself as Jung Yun-ah, the new leader of the Jungmu sect. She claimed to have come to see the Nameless One to deliver an important message. The first thing the girl expressed was deep gratitude for the salvation of her native land. Soo-hyuk realized that in front of him was the daughter of that same legendary Chung Yu-han. He noted her strong spirit, similar to her father's, and she vowed that the sect would not forget this debt. After the ceremonies were over, the young man asked why they had come as a whole group. It turned out the meeting had been organized by direct order of the association's chairman himself. The guy accepted this news, but he could tell from the girl's face that she wasn't very happy about this turn of events. Soo-hyuk declined the invitation and told them to contact him officially. The girl approved of this wise and balanced decision of the main character. Yun-ah promised to convey his words correctly. Gigi reflected on her relationship with the chairman. From the outside, it looked like their relationship was anything but friendly. The girl thanked him again and was about to leave with her people, having completed her mission. The scene suddenly changed, and a sunset appeared on the screen. A large building and palm trees. Soo-hyuk literally stepped into the frame in a suit and exhaled deeply. And then he noted with relief. His body had almost completely recovered from the battle. It was time to pack up and head back, ending his visit. The instructor's announcement about the launch of a full investigation using a new magical device popped into his head. He wanted to talk to Shar more, but she was clearly busy with other things. And then a knockdown door flew in front of his face. A bunch of guys in suits ran into the room, and they surrounded the main character's bedroom. He sat among them, just like in that meme. The sudden intrusion of people made Soo-hyuk ask an irritated question about the rules of decency. One of the new guests directly stated that he was aware of the chairman's summons being ignored. This statement sounded like a final warning to the Nameless One. The stranger demanded that the boy obediently follow him without unnecessary resistance. Soo-hyuk immediately determined that these people had nothing to do with the Chonmu sect. He asked if the chairman had sent them personally, and was again told to follow quietly. In response, the man reminded them who exactly had defeated the demon they had failed to deal with. Not wanting any more bloodshed, He told them to leave and learn more Korean. The stranger's terrible pronunciation was barely understandable, and it became clear that no agreement would be reached. At that very moment, the bull in the suit grabbed the main character by the shoulder from behind. One of the attackers shouted that this should not be taken as a personal feud or insult, but the main character immediately dodged the weak blow of the bastard in the suit. And then, with incredible speed and force, he crouched down and struck the attacker straight in the stomach. The impact was so strong that the man flew away as if on jet fuel. He crashed into the panoramic window of the room, and all the iron supports quickly bent, and the man fell asleep on the ground, breathing heavily. Soo-hyuk's cold question about whether they had finished talking hung in the tense silence. The first of the opponents was defeated and lost consciousness after an instant attack. The guy asked if there was anyone among the others who could speak Korean normally, and looking at all the other agents, it became clear that none of them wanted to go out. But suddenly, there was one frightened man who, with a trembling voice, confirmed his language skills. Nephalana was already dragging him along the ground by his hair. He immediately began begging for mercy, completely demoralized by what was happening. A moment after the interrogation, the guy told all he could. Under pressure, the prisoner indicated on the map the location of the city hall and the underground bunker. It became clear that the association chairman had personally ordered their capture. Soo-hyuk noted with disdain that they didn't even remember their duty to save their country. Soo-hyuk decided that he had to meet the chairman in person and tell him everything directly. When asked about the fate of the captured translator, a curt order was given to take him along. Since the chairman was unlikely to speak Korean, this prisoner could be useful in the conversation. At the appointed place, Soo-hyuk was met with the words that he had come on his own, as they wanted. The guy was met by a new bull in a suit with his retinue. It was clear that these were not ordinary fools. The guard demanded that he remove his armor and mask as a prerequisite for an audience. The translator conveyed this demand to his formidable guard in a trembling voice. Soo-hyuk explained that they had misunderstood everything, because he had come here to capture the chairman. The security guard dismissively concluded that the guy was one of those who didn't understand words. And then, he ordered all his agents to capture this masked bastard. In an instant, hordes of agents in Naruto's running pose started running towards them from all sides. Flash. A moment later, the action finally shifted to the underground bunker where the leadership was hiding. Chairman Yuk Jaho was irritated to learn that even the elves had abandoned him. In anger, he began to find out what that same Jungyeon-ah was doing at this time. He was informed that the girl's mission had not yet been successfully completed. Jaho was furious and shouted that everyone was ignoring him, including the elves and the entire Chonmu sect. The thought of the Nameless One coming to capture him made the chairman try to calm down. He convinced himself that the hero wouldn't dare commit a crime because of his status. But suddenly, earth began to fall from the ceiling onto all the council members, and the armored door to the bunker sounded an alarm. The chairman didn't understand what was going on. They were supposedly in a super safe place. But a moment later, the bunker door was knocked down and flew forward, just like the door in the main character's house. Afterwards, an alarming cry announced that the bunker's defenses had been instantly breached. Soo-hyuk confirmed that he had finally found everyone who had been hiding from him so carefully. His dragon partner was by his side, and also an informant. With irony, the protagonist inquired about the well-being of the people gathered in this shelter. The chairman, in fear, immediately tried to start a dialogue, addressing the guy as a young man. The main character immediately demanded that the translator explain what this Chinese man was saying. The translator only laughed nervously, understanding the absurdity and tension of the situation. He told the main character that the fat man was greeting them. The Chinese official immediately made huge financial demands on Korea for the damages caused by the battle. He threatened to turn Korea into a sea of fire if he refused. Sounding very angry, the translator lied, saying the official was asking to speak calmly and with a smile. Feli immediately intervened, reporting that she had figured out the complex structure and tones of the language. She stated that she now understood the true meaning of the words, which surprised everyone. She added that the translator had blatantly lied about the content of the threats. The translator, caught in a lie, began to beg for forgiveness in horror while being interrupted. Yuk Jaho resorted to threats, declaring that one person couldn't protect all of Korea. His family wouldn't always be safe. He brought up the subject of Soo-hyuk's family directly, trying to put maximum pressure on him. Feely noticed. The guy noted with cold contempt that this man was talking the first nonsense that came to his mind. The menacing question about how he dared mention his family sounded chilling. His aura turned blood red. Jacko continued to insist that the hero wouldn't dare touch him anyway. He was confident that his reputation as an international hero would prevent him from committing any violence. But then a red light flew into his face, right into his eye, and his scream immediately resounded throughout the entire street around his headquarters, even though they were underground. The next day, Chairman Yuk Jaho made an official statement about the invasion. In his speech, he expressed his endless gratitude to the Nameless One and the Elven Knights. Although it was definitely him, his unusual behavior and tone made many feel strange. The situation that could have led to war was somehow resolved. Suhyuk praised Feli for remembering the magical dragon oath at that moment. It was the control of this oath that allowed them to avoid bloodshed and settle everything. The young man thanked the girl for her help, without which resolving the conflict would have been impossible. Thanks to Nefeliano, the worst-case scenario was averted, and everything ended peacefully. Meanwhile, the action moved to Moscow, where events were closely watched. While the whole world was agitated by the demonic invasion of China, Russia had its own business. Vladimir watched the events unfolding around the hero with interest. A grin crossed his face. He was interested in how much the Nameless One had grown in strength since their last meeting.